be looking into top 10 scary South African urban legends. And then we'll look into some more urban legends after that. But anyway, we should find some fun stuff in here.
It's said to have rose-tinted skin and eyes with shocking pink hair. It's said to prey
I'll
on
be right back.
adolescent girls, especially ones wearing pink, both in real life and in their nightmares. People say it tries to corner a girl and then speaks to her in a musical woman's voice and asks if the girl will play or be friends with Pinky Pinky. Some parts of South Africa are dismissive of this, but authorities do take reports of the creature seriously. Headmasters have even closed down schools in the past to protect their pupils from the so-called myth. Police investigations are not uncommon when reports of the Pinky Pinky come in. Perhaps real rapists and murderers have contributed to the spread of this myth, but many locals will tell you there's no smoke without fire, and the Pinky Pinky really is out there. Next up at number 9 now, we have the Ghostly Horseman. In the Tokai Forest lies the Tokai Manor. The story goes that in the mid-1800s it was owned by a man called Petrus Eckstein. He loved wild drunken parties, and for him, New Year's Eve was the greatest party of them all. One New Year's Eve, Petrus challenged his son Frederick in front of all of the guests. He made a bet that Frederick should ride his favourite horse up the steep steps of the manor and into the house. His son did this and all the guests cheered. As he went back down the stairs though, a slave rang the bell to signal midnight. The horse got spooked and tumbled down the steps, dragging Frederick to his death. This violent end is said to have bound Frederick's soul to the house, specifically in the way that he died. In the years since then, people who have worked or visited the house report hearing strange sounds, drunken laughter, or the echoing of horse hooves. Then there are some who swear they've seen a man in old-fashioned clothes galloping along on a horseback in the forest, especially on New Year's Eve or in the early hours of the morning. At number 8 now, we have Highway Sheila. Residents of Chatsworth will know all about this famous ghost. According to them, Sheila was a young Indian girl who was trying to flag down people to help fix her broken car by the side of the N2 highway. A group of men pulled over, they sexually assaulted her, murdered her, and then left her by the side of the road. Her spirit is now said to be bound to that stretch of road, full of vengeance and hate for all of the living. She now does what was done to her, terrorizing or even killing innocent people on the road. One story involves a young man who picked up a hitchhiker called Sheila. The man offered to take her home and noticed the temperature drop in his car when the woman got in. He offered her his coat, which she accepted. He then dropped her off at her home nearby, at which point she wanted to return the coat. The man insisted that she keep it and said he would fetch it in the morning. When he went back to the house the following day, a middle-aged woman answered the door and the man asked for Sheila. The woman was baffled and said that Sheila doesn't live here anymore. The man said he had just dropped her off the night before. The woman said that was impossible, as Sheila had died years before. She told him where her grave was as proof. He rushed to the spot and there, draped over the gravestone, was the jacket he had given to Sheila. Next up at number 7 now, we have the Mermaid of the Karoo. The Great Karoo is a large desert in South Africa. It doesn't rain very often there at all. They say that in parts of the Karoo, there are 5-year-old children who have never seen rain before. It didn't always used to be like this though. 250 million years ago, the whole area was apparently sea. Today you can find fossilized shells in the desert as evidence. This seems to tie in with a local legend that deep below the ground, in water pools, in caves, there lies a mermaid. Legend says that she has lived there ever since a great flood washed her there from the sea many years ago. When the waters receded, she was trapped there. In local folklore, people have seen the mermaid for generations. She lures them in by promising their heart's desires before sending them to a watery grave. This urban legend picked up pace when people pointed out that the ancient sand rock paintings in the driest part of Karoo Desert seem to depict mermaid-like creatures on the walls. Skeptics argue otherwise, but still, the legend of the Karoo mermaid has been around for a very long time now, and may continue for just as long. Moving on to number 6 now, we have the Anti-Occult case.
I have this really weird bruise that has just come up out of nowhere for no reason. In the weirdest places, actually, right there on the palm of my hand. It's fucking weird. I didn't do anything, to my hand. I didn't injure it, but I have this really nasty bruise on the palm of my hand. have no idea where the hell it came from. But in all fairness, I am very, very clumsy. And so it could have come from anywhere, honestly. But it's still really weird. Because, like, it wasn't there yesterday. Or even earlier today. But it just kind of popped up out of nowhere. And I just noticed it a couple of minutes ago, and I have no idea what happened. But anyway, like, I've done a lot of clumsy shit, but I've never bruised the palm of my hand before. Anyway, back to the story.
Heard of normal police, traffic police, and undercover police, but have you heard of anti-occult police? In the 1980s and early 1990s, South Africa saw the birth of a real police squad whose sole role it was to fight back against satanic crimes. The founder of the unit was a Dr. Cobus Jonker, also known as the Hound of God. He said that in the 90s, he was investigating more than 250 cases a year and believed that there were thousands of Satanists active in South Africa. It was their job to make sure people who practice Wicca were doing so without harming anyone else around them. There were documented cases of some traditional healers harvesting organs from people in the name of their belief or simply for money. They often believe the victim must be alive when the organs are harvested, and they will try to find the youngest and most innocent victims possible. The pain and hormones released is apparently what gives the organ its power. In 2006, the police unit was officially dissolved, although some people in South Africa feel they simply went underground to continue a very real fight against the occult. Next up at number 5 now, we have the lightning bird. This is a mythical creature in a number of different tribal folklores in South Africa. It's said to take the form of a black and white bird which is the size of a person. It summons thunder and lightning using its wings and talons. It's also vampiric and has an insatiable appetite for human blood. The bird is usually the servant of a witch or witch doctor and attacks their enemies. Some say it manifests itself as lightning to men and a bird to women. Although people fear the lightning bird attacking them and sucking their blood dry, some people hope to actually hunt it themselves. You see, the fat of the lightning bird is said to be a great source of fuel or an ingredient for traditional medicine. However, killing it is said to be no easy task, as the lightning bird is immune to gunshots or stabbing. You can't poison it or drown it. It can only be killed by fire. So, if you've ever wanted to hunt down and kill a vampiric lightning bird that can suck your blood dry, now you know how. Moving on to number 4 now, we have the Greenpoint Lighthouse. Built in 1924, the red and white striped Greenpoint Lighthouse is the oldest working beacon in South Africa. With all of that history, it may not come as a surprise to some people that the building is famously haunted. The story goes that the tower is inhabited by a one-legged spirit simply called Daddy West. There was actually a lighthouse keeper by the name of West who worked there in 1901. Some people believe this adds names. Next up at number 3 now, we have the Afterlife Prison. Pieter Gijsbert van Nudert was the governor of Cape Town in the early 1700s. During his time, 4 soldiers tried to flee his harsh rule. They were imprisoned. When they tried to escape, they were sentenced to death. The governor refused to overturn the sentencing and also attend the hanging. The last soldier to receive his sentence cursed the governor with his dying breath. When officers went to report to the governor that the execution had gone as planned, they found him dead. He was slumped in his chair with a look of sheer terror on his face. Locals blamed the curse, but some people went even further with it. They believed the curse was not only to but to also tie his soul to the prison forever. These days, visitors to the Castle of Good Hope have reported seeing him roaming the hallways. They say he seems totally unaware of his situation as a ghost and just stares at tourists as if they are new prisoners ready to be executed for their crimes. Next up at number 2 now, we have the Spook House. This very old house in Cape Town has become known over the years simply as the Spook House. The story goes that in the 1970s, the basement in this house was home to a cult group. They practiced their satanic rituals down here, unbeknown to the people at street level. They eventually left, worried that their rituals would be attracting too much attention. Although they were now gone, their energy apparently wasn't. Some believe that one of their victims still haunts the place to this day. Over the years, a number of visitors have spotted a translucent old man walking around the inside of the house. When he disappears, they hear doors swinging and slamming even though the air is still. And finally, at number 1 now, we have the ghost of Elsa Cloetti. She was a young Dutch woman who lived in the old Hoot Bay homestead that now houses the Katima restaurant. Back in the 1800s, they say she was in love with a British soldier. Her father prohibited her from dating him, and so the soldier hung himself from an oak tree near the manor house. The girl apparently died soon after as well. At the time, they said it was a broken heart. It's been well over a century and a half since these deaths, but people who work there swear they still see the couple. The staff at the restaurant occasionally witness very bizarre occurrences. These include pots flying off their kitchen walls, or books flying off their shelves, and lights dimming inexplicably. Others have seen the ghostly figure of a woman standing at one of the manor's windows, as well as that of a young man lurking near the oak trees, staring longingly at the house. The staff all believe this to be so true that they frequently leave meals out for the couple and say they have seen them dine together, enjoying what they were denied in life. Well, that was creepy, but also kind of cool, I think. I already wanted to go to South Africa before I made this video, and now I also know some really cool urban legend spots to check out too. I'll probably freak myself out though before I ever get there, but hey, it's a thought that counts, I think. Where are we off to next then in the world with our Urban Legends series? You guys let me know. Thanks for watching, guys. My name is Danny Burke, and I will see you all in the next video.
Holy crap.
What the heck is that? Is that a UFO? Well, it...
One of the first urban legend videos we did on this channel was the Korean urban legends. In many ways, I think it spawned the whole series. It's let us cover a whole bunch of different countries around the world, so I thought, why don't we return to Korea and take a look at some more? I know some of you said that Korea has the scariest stories by far. Let's look at some more and see how many others of you agree. My name is Danny Burke. This is the top 10 scary Korean urban legends, part 2. Just before we jump into this video, I want to say a quick thank you to Shade Tree Sunglasses who made this video possible. They are genuinely one of the coolest companies I've come across recently. You're probably wondering why I'm holding this little wooden container in my hand. Well, that's because these contain the Shade Tree sunglasses that I got, and if I could wear these in all the videos I do for you guys, I probably would. I wear them all the time outside of work, just like this. I love them. They have a huge selection now. There's something to suit everyone out there. One thing they all have in common is that they're all made using real wood and titanium. They also all come with polarized lenses, a bamboo hard case, just like this, and also a microfiber soft case inside. One thing I love is that they keep their range fresh by always bringing out new designs. They've just brought out their new summer styles for 2018, including a brand new limited edition America pair. Now, this all sounds amazing, but summer's got you a little bit strapped for cash. They've got you covered, don't worry. If you go to their website, you can use the code TOP10 for $5 off your purchase today, or you can use the link in the description box below. Thanks again to them for making this video possible, and now let's get on with the video. Starting off at number 10 now, we have 1212. The story goes like this. One night, a Korean girl named Sun Hee was at school. It was late, and she was studying in the library with a group of other students from her class. All the lights were on, but the rest of the school was in darkness. After a while, Sun Hee went to use the toilet. She told her friends and then headed down the dark hallway to the bathroom. A few minutes passed, and then in the library, the other students began to hear a faint tapping noise. It was quiet at first, but got steadily louder. It seemed to be coming from the window. When they looked out, there, standing in the darkness, was a pale woman. She pressed her face against the window, but seemed to keep her eyes shut. One of her long, crooked fingers was tapping on the window. Then, one of the students gasped in horror. The woman wasn't closing her eyes. She didn't have any eyes at all. There were just dark holes where her eyes should have been. Then she raised her fist and smashed the glass. All the lights went out. In the bathroom, Sun Hee was about to wash her hands when she was plunged into darkness. There was silence. She was too far from the library to hear the screams as the woman slaughtered the other students. She stepped back into the library and stopped dead in her tracks. The bodies of the other students were everywhere. Shaking with fear, her mind raced as she tried to figure out what had happened. Then she heard footsteps coming from down the hallway. Sun Hee dropped to the ground to play dead. She heard something enter the room. It made a rustling sound as it moved. Then there was a whisper. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Sun Hee kept her eyes closed and prayed. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. She felt the presence draw nearer and heard the voice getting louder. 1, 2. 1, 2, 1, 2. As it came beside her, the counting stopped. Sun Hee remained paralyzed with fear. There was absolute silence. After several minutes of this, Sun Hee thought the woman had gone. She slowly opened her eyes. The woman was crouching directly over her, staring into her eyes. She had one pale, bony finger pointing straight at Sun Hee's face. 1, 2, she said, before plucking her eyeballs out with her fingers. Yes. Okay, we started off pretty intense with that one, didn't we? Let's keep it going though, as we move on to our number 9 now, which is the Cuckoo Man. This urban legend began to spread around Korea a few years ago. There were rumors in schools about a crazy man who was terrorizing students, the Cuckoo Man. They say that he would lurk in alleyways and dark streets, lying in wait for his next victim. One story involved a group of schoolgirls passing by. They heard a voice saying, "Cuckoo, cuckoo." When they turned around to look at him, the Cuckoo Man would savagely attack them. Some say that he used a baseball bat, others say his weapon of choice was an axe. Either way, reports of this happening became more and more frequent. One of them involved 20 to 30 schoolgirls walking down the street when the Cuckoo Man jumped them and started hitting them all with a baseball bat one by one. He only stopped when the police arrived, at which point he fled into the night. Some say there is one way to stop the Cuckoo Man from attacking you. If you're walking down the street and hear a strange voice behind you saying "cuckoo, cuckoo," you must also reply with "cuckoo, cuckoo," and then run for your life. Moving on to number 8 now, we have the MP3 kidnappings. This urban legend appeared around 2010 and has been spreading in some form or another ever since. People say that kidnappers in Korea have had much easier jobs ever since people started listening to music with their headphones. It was around 2010 when listening to music like this became very widespread in South Korea, and that's about when the reports of the kidnappings began. People say that kidnappers were driving around dark streets waiting to spot someone with headphones blasting music in their ears. And then, when the innocent person is distracted, they are bundled into the back of a car and taken away. The phenomenon began spreading across the whole country and was even talked about online. Many blogs and forums told the story of a female middle school student who was walking around one night, headphones blaring. She was kidnapped by 3 or 4 criminals who wrapped tape around her mouth and then assaulted her. They then returned her to the spot where they found her. Although these may just seem like stories, it has resulted in some South Koreans developing a real superstition about listening to loud music alone, especially when walking along dark and creepy streets. Next up, number 7 now, we have the Handsome Man. The story goes like this. 19-year-old Karuko lived on the 14th floor of her apartment building. One night she was coming home late from university and took the elevator up to her floor. She was alone, but a moment before the doors closed, a handsome man stepped into the elevator with her. He smiled and stood quite close to her. They chatted for a while, and the man said that he lived on the 13th floor. When they reached that, he got out, turned to face her. His smile turned to an evil one. He tilted his head and said, "I'll see you upstairs." Then he pulled out a knife and laughed. She tried to stop the elevator by hitting every button she could, but nothing worked. When she got to her floor, the doors opened and there he was. She was never heard from again. Some people in Korea believe this is the reason why elevators now have a stop button, and they'll be happy to tell you Karuko's story to show you why. Moving on to number 6 now, we have the sesame seeds. The story goes like this. One day a girl was worried about her skin getting old and wrinkled. She was obsessed with improving the look of her skin constantly. At first she used normal products, but then felt she needed more than that and started to explore stranger techniques. One day a friend of a friend told her that if you put sesame seeds in your bath, they will help your skin stay youthful and glowing. The girl had heard a lot of techniques, but not one like this. Perhaps this was a secret method that would satisfy her forever. She rushed home and ran a bath. After pouring a huge bag of sesame seeds, she jumped into the bath, where she stayed for hours. Her family told her to get out of the bathroom eventually, but the girl refused. She wanted more time for it to work. Her mother grew suspicious and kicked the door down eventually. To her absolute horror, she found the girl in a shocking state. Every last seed had attached itself to her skin pores and wrinkles and sent roots down into her skin. Her daughter had a calm but crazed look in her eyes. She was trying to remove the seeds one by one with a toothpick, but all that came out was her trickling blood splashing onto the bathroom floor. Next up at number 5 now, we have the Eyeless Woman. This urban legend comes from north of Seoul. There you can find a strip of highway that connects Goyang to Paju. It's called Jeuro, and it's a road that's notorious for heavy fog that's been blamed for a number of horrific car accidents over the years. At least that's what the officials say. You see, many locals believe there is a supernatural cause behind the accidents. Many drivers have claimed to have seen a young woman wearing sunglasses stood on the side of the highway at night. It's only when they get close the drivers realize there are no sunglasses. Instead, her eyes are actually gouged out and absolutely hollow. The shock of seeing her sends drivers careering off the road and to their untimely deaths. Moving on to number 4 now, we have the cockroaches. This South Korean urban legend will freak out anyone with a fear of creepy crawlies. The story goes like this. One day, a girl's stomach started to hurt really bad. She didn't see any reason for this, and so she went straight to the hospital. The doctors took an x-ray, which appeared to show what they called foreign elements inside her. They took some more detailed x-rays and discovered that what they were actually looking at were cockroaches inside her body. Somehow, a cockroach's eggs had ended up inside her, where they had hatched into fully grown cockroaches, happy of the fluids and warmth. They showed no signs of wanting to leave and had to be removed through surgery. Many people now check their clothes twice for cockroach eggs, unless they want the story to come true for them too. Next up at number 3 now, we have the dead dream. According to some people in Korea, there have been reports of dead family members appearing in people's dreams. One such story involves that of a man who dreamt his grandmother was beckoning him over while she was waist deep in water. He wanted to go to her in the dream. After all, he did miss her, and she was still his grandmother, even if she was behaving really creepily. Something didn't feel right though. He felt in danger, even though it was just a dream. The next day he told his wife about the dream, and her eyes widened. His wife explained what the dream meant. She said, if you go into the arms of a dead person in a dream, especially if they're in water, it will be a sure sign that your soul is about to be stolen. The husband said he kept having the same dream night after night, but each time he could feel himself getting pulled closer and closer to her. He was only just managing to wake up in time. Then one day they realized they had kept one of the grandmother's possessions in the house by accident instead of leaving her to rest with it. The family believed this is what tied her spirit to the house still and was causing the dreams. After they paid their respects once more, the man's dreams stopped. At least for now. Next up at number 2 now, we have fan death. This is a well-known urban legend in Korean culture that fans not only cool people down, they can also kill them. They are said to do this in a number of different ways. One way is hypothermia. A person's metabolism is said to slow down at night and make them become more sensitive to heat. Some people believe this makes them more prone to hypothermia, and that essentially a fan really can freeze you to death. Then there is the slightly more creepy reason, asphyxiation. Some believe that fans will suck up oxygen and blow carbon dioxide towards this sleeping person. This will slowly kill them in their sleep. It seems that this urban legend is very prevalent in Korea. In 2006, a South Korean government group warned of asphyxiation from electric fans and said they can kill people, especially elder patients or those with breathing problems. And finally, number 1 now, we have the cockroach face. Yes, we're returning to cockroaches now for our final story. It goes a little bit like this. A guy had some bad acne on his face. He was desperate to cure it, perhaps a little bit too desperate. He told his friends he would do anything to get rid of the unsightly scars the spots had left on his face. They told him to go see a local shaman who apparently had a very special method for treating acne. He didn't ask any questions. Like I said, he would do anything for a cure. The shaman sat him down and quickly told him exactly what he needed to do. He told him to find a cockroach before going to bed. He would have to put it next to his pillow just before going to sleep. Sleeping with this cockroach by his face would make the scars go away. The guy didn't ask any questions about how this would work and went home. He found a cockroach, left it right by his pillow, and tried to get to sleep that night. The next morning, he woke up, he looked in the mirror, and was amazed to see that it had worked. His scars were all gone. But then, on closer inspection, he saw that the scar holes were not gone. They were simply filled with dozens of tiny, oozing cockroach eggs. I hope you guys haven't eaten recently because I feel a little bit sick. I guess the good news is that is the end of the video, so you can go and recover if that last one was a little bit too gross. The bad news is, well, yeah, it's the end of the video. Where is the urban legend ship going to stop next in the world? You guys have the wheel. I'm just a passenger. Thanks for watching, guys. I am Danny Berg, and I will see you all in the next video. Just before I go, I want to say thank you again to Shade. Hello everyone, welcome back. Due to popular demand, we're going to do another video talking about the creepy times when friends have sleepovers. Some people say there's safety in numbers. Others say that evil hunts for groups. Nobody says that actually, it's just me, I think. The point is, we are back with this series. My name is Danny Burke, and this is the Top 10 Scary Sleepover Stories, Part 2. I just want to quickly let you guys know as well about our brand new channel, Esports One. It's launching this Thursday. I'm very excited about it. We're going to be putting out amazing videos all about your favorite games, esports, and streamers. The channel is ready, the videos are ready. All we need is you to go and subscribe using the link in our description box below. I'm hosting as well, if that means anything to you guys. The link is probably in the comment section too. I'm not really sure. Why don't you go and check for me? Alright, thanks guys. Let's get back to the video, and I'll see you over on Esports One this Thursday. Starting off at number 10 now, we have the camera. This one comes from user I Happen to Disagree. They said that when they were about 14, 3 of his friends were having a sleepover. For the purposes of this story, he called them A, B, and C. They were staying at A's house. Now, A lived with his grandfather after his mother and grandmother passed away from cancer. That night, his grandfather was out of town. The group stayed up playing video games and then crashed at about 2 a.m. on the floor in the living room. Later that night, he woke up freezing cold. He checked the time. It was 4:30. He looked around and saw a red blinking light over on a coffee table. He made a mental note about the light seeming out of place, but he was cold and too tired to get up, so he rolled over and went back to sleep. The next morning, he was woken up by A shaking him violently. He opened his eyes and could tell by his face something was wrong. He tried to ask him what was going on, but he just pointed at the coffee table. On the table was his grandma's old camera. He told him it hadn't been out of his grandma's drawer since she died. Who took it out? They tried to calm themselves down by saying it must have been his granddad, who was getting nostalgic, perhaps. Friends B and C seemed okay with that, but A had his doubts. A week went by and they had pretty much forgotten about the strange morning, except for A, who had been stressing out ever since. He decided to go and get the film on the pictures developed. He called them the next day. His voice was trembling and he told them to all come over quick. When they arrived, he threw down the pictures in front of them. There was a bunch of holiday snaps from the last trip that his grandmother went on, but when they got to the last 3 pictures, they froze. The pictures were of all of them asleep on the living room floor in front of the TV. Nobody else was home that night. The camera had no self-timer. None of them have ever figured out what happened, and it still sends a chill down their spines. Moving on to number 9 now, we have the stalker. This one comes from Reddit user A Platinum Gamer. He said when he was 13, he and a few friends were heading over to their friend John's house for a sleepover. About halfway along their journey in a rougher part of town, they noticed a man in a dark jacket walking behind them. It was getting dark and cold. The further they walked, the more he seemed to follow them. Despite taking a different route home to try and lose him, still he followed. 10 minutes went by. They reached the end of John's street. The man slowed down. They rushed into the house. Okay, but shaken up. Later on, John's mother and brother left the house, leaving the boys alone. They sat on a couch watching movies. He got up to get a drink from the fridge. When he closed the door, he glanced at the window and thought he saw someone standing outside the front of the house. It was dark outside though, so it was hard to know for sure. He sat down. About 20 minutes later, he glanced at the window again. This time, there was no mistake. He saw a man standing outside, the man who followed them home. He calmly looked back to the TV, hoping to not give anything away. He quietly told his friends that there was a man outside, but not to look. John looked. They all...
I've been doing pretty good at this. Just getting stuff done. Working on this picture. I got this weird bruise on my hand, though. I don't know what the hell happened. Like, it just kind of showed up. It's weird. It's not even sore or anything. Like, I haven't hit it or done anything to it. It just kind of popped up out of nowhere. It's weird. Um, but anyway, other than that, I'm great. Um, I hope you're enjoying the new content, um, or the new direction we're going in so far. Yeah, I don't think so, is this because it wasn't there when I got up. It I didn't notice it until like about an hour ago. It's weird. Um, I'm sure it's fine. It's just weird. A very strange place for that anyway. Oh, it's just a bruise. It's just a very weird place to get one. Like, because I've done a lot of stuff in my life. I don't think I've ever bruised the palm of my hand. Like, even when I shot my 410 Derringer, which kicks like a mule, that didn't bruise my palm. But um it's just weird. Anyway, I hope you're enjoying our new content as is. And I'm enjoying it. It's a lot less stressful, I do know that. No bullshit, no bickering, just scary stories and art. Chill time.
Freaked out. John called his brother, who said he would come back right away. They hid in the living room until he came back. They searched around the whole house but found no one. Perhaps the scariest part is that apparently this wasn't the last time him either, but perhaps that's a story for another day. Moving on to number 8 now, we have the serial killer. This story was told by a Reddit user who said that when she was a kid, she shared a room with her sister. One night, they had one of their friends over for a sleepover. As they fell asleep around 1 a.m., their friend woke them up to show them that a deer was on their back deck. Now, they were in Montana. This was quite a normal sight. They didn't really want to see it, and they fell asleep again. Their friend stayed up, though, to watch. She woke them up again about 5 minutes later. It's a person. They looked again and saw the shadow move. The man's head area. He was looking into their kitchen window. She was too scared to tell her parents or move, so they rang their home phone. It rang loudly and the man took off. The cops were called out but never found the guy. They did tell them something though. 2 weeks earlier, the police had sent around notices warning of a dangerous sexual predator on the loose. Some thought that he was staying with a family member just 3 streets away from their house. A few months later, that man was caught by police for the kidnapping, abuse and murder of 2 children about a 2-hour drive away. In his police interrogation, he confessed to stalking kids by watching their homes at night. He used night vision goggles with green lights on them. Let's say no more on that one. Next up on number 7 now, we have the knocking. This one came from a Reddit user who said that he had a sleepover as a kid with his friend Mike. It was a cloudy, dark night. There was a bit of rain and an occasional crackle of thunder. They were 13 years old. Mike lived opposite a field surrounded by trees, and his backyard led to a forest. He and Mike were playing long after his dad went to sleep. While playing video games, they heard a knock at the back door. The blinds were shut, so they couldn't see outside. Mike opened the blinds. As he did, he shut off the TV and lamp because he didn't want them to be seen. Their eyes adjusted to the outside. They could see nothing but grass, lit up every few moments by lightning. They waited with bated breath. They kept their eyes glued to the window, half expecting a figure to emerge from the darkness. Eventually, they turned the TV and lamp back on, trying to pretend that they'd imagined the knocking. The blinds were open this time. Every now and again, he would take a nervous glance at them. At one point, as they were engrossed in their game, they heard a second set of knocks. He and Mike jumped up and looked at each each other. They couldn't really see outside, at least not until the flash of lightning that lit up the area outside, only for a split second, but long enough to show a person standing at the window. They ran. They ran upstairs to Mike's dad, screaming at him to get up. The three of them then ran out to the backyard, but they found nobody. In the piles of wet mud, they found heavy, distinct prints of boots. They followed the footprints, but they eventually disappeared. They looked out into the woods, but there was nothing. They all went back to bed. He and Mike were sleeping in the living room. Of course, he couldn't sleep now, even with the blinds shut. Then, at exactly 12:15, there was a third set of knocks. They ran upstairs again. This time, the dad ran outside alone and told them to call the cops. The police came, but found nobody either. The knocking didn't happen again, but that was more than enough for a lifetime. He never slept over at Mike's again. The thought of it has always given him the creeps. At number 6 now we have Janice's mother. This one comes from Reddit user Susie Greenberg. Now Susie said that when she was 10 years old, she went for a sleepover at her friend Janice's house. They hadn't been friends for long, but her parents were quite laid back, so they'd let her go and stay there. She was dropped off and soon they were singing karaoke. Janice's mum said that she had to leave, and so the pair were left alone for the night. They had a great time and ended up going to bed in Janice's room around 1 a.m. A few hours later, Janice's mum came home. She started banging on the bedroom door, causing Susie to call out in fear. Janice told her to be quiet, but it was too late. The mum kicked the door open and grabbed Janice's face. She began screaming at Janice because she apparently left the TV on. She began slamming her fists around Susie and screaming, "You think you're better than me?" over and over again. Susie was sobbing and scared. She asked to use the phone so her mum could come pick her up, but Janice's mum refused, saying, "I know what you're doing, little girl, and you aren't going anywhere until I say you can." She barely slept that night. The next morning, she managed to get hold of the phone while the mum was in the shower. Her own mum came and picked her up, but she was too scared to say anything. It wasn't until 2 weeks later when she told her sister. She told their parents, and they all comforted her. A few weeks later, Janice stopped coming to the school. It wasn't until years later that she realized that Janice's mum must have had deep-rooted issues, ones that a child might struggle to comprehend. Moving on to number 5 now, we have the cellar door. This is another one submitted to Mr. Nightmare. The user said that they used to be friends with a kid named Chris. Chris moved away across the state when he was 8. Since he never got to see Chris anymore, he got his mum to drive him out to Chris's new house way out in the country. When he arrived, he was impressed. It was a big house surrounded by woods in all directions. They watched a movie that night and chatted. Sometimes he thought he'd hear noises coming from below the house. He asked Chris if he had a basement. Chris said no, but said his family had all heard the same noises over the past few days and that they were calling out someone to inspect it. The next day was warm. They spent the day outside and went for a walk in the woods. They followed what looked like a path. Suddenly, Chris tripped over something that made a clank. They looked down and saw a covered up cellar door, which Chris said he wasn't even aware of. They opened it up. A ladder led down to a pitch black tunnel. Both of them froze. Then a sound roared at the tunnel, a bang and then a metallic clanging, getting closer and closer. They realized it was the sound of someone climbing up the ladder. They ran in fear and fetched Chris's dad. He too was shocked by what he found. His dad gathered a few friends and they went down to investigate. They came up about 5 minutes later. Every one of them looked shaken. They had a secret meeting with Chris's mum and didn't let the boys hear anything. The police arrived soon after. They were forced to stay in their rooms. It wasn't until years later when Chris found out exactly what happened that he finally texted him. His dad had found 3 full body bags in the corner of a dark room, an old cot, broken beer bottles everywhere, and the smell of freshly smoked marijuana. When they heard the sounds coming from below the house, they had probably heard the sound of whoever was living down there, and whoever was responsible for the dead bodies. At number 4 now, we have the giggles. This one comes from Katie the Magnificent. Now she said that when she was a kid, her best friend came over for a sleepover. They hung out in her room watching videos on their computer. They were laughing hard, but noticed when they stopped laughing, they could still hear muffled laughter coming from outside. Her friend, Beth, paused the video. Katie thought it was her big brother. She shouted for him to go to bed. Footsteps went down the stairs. She grabbed her phone to text him, but as she did, she saw that she actually was missing a few texts from him. The first one said, "Mom said stay in the house at night, dumbass." The next one said, "Can you stop banging around upstairs? Some of us actually sleep." The last one said, "Thanks. There's Sprite in the fridge, by the way." Katie was spooked. They never left the house and they were in their room well before those texts were sent. She called him. He said it is better to be good. She explained what had happened. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Open your window, get onto the roof, take your phones and go across to Dr. Tom's house. Call the police on your way out, and after that, call mum. And remember, I love you and I love mum and dad. A lot, okay? Go now. Katie was crying as she pushed Beth out onto the roof. They called the police as they escaped their neighbors, Dr. Tom. When he heard what happened, he grabbed his gun and went over. When the police arrived, the girls were filled in on the details. Her brother had fought the intruder with a baseball bat. The intruder surrendered when Dr. Tom came in with a gun. Everyone praised the brother's quick thinking and bravery, and they were left wondering how the intruder got in the first place. Next up at number 3 now, we have hide and seek. This user submitted his story to Mr. Nightmare. He said he and his cousin Tyler used to have sleepovers all the time when they were kids. It was always at his house though, because he had the cool house. One time when they were 9, both of their parents were going out for a night, so they had Tyler's older brother Joe taking care of them. An hour into it, Joe told both of them that he was going out and not to tell their parents. Tyler was happy to have the place to himself, and Joe got to go out for the night. He and Tyler had some food and then decided to play hide and seek. He hid first. Tyler was seeking. They started in the basement where Tyler would count. There was only one rule: only use flashlights, no house lights, just to add some suspense. He ran all the way to the upstairs of the house. He chose to hide in one of the bedrooms and buried himself between 2 big beanbag chairs and a blanket. He left the door open to avoid any suspicions. He heard creaking coming into the room. Tyler was looking for him. He opened the closet. Nothing. Then the second closet, silence. Then he walked over to the other side of the room and started opening the desk drawers. Suddenly, he heard Tyler's voice, but it wasn't coming from the room. It was coming from the bottom of the stairs. His mouth opened in horror. He lifted the blanket and saw a figure standing there, a fully grown man. The man ducked into the corner of the room when he heard Tyler's voice. Tyler entered the room with his flashlight and kept saying his name over and over. He was praying his light wouldn't reach the corner of the room. His light landed on him underneath the blanket. He might not have actually seen him, but he still jumped up anyway and kind of fake laughed, telling Tyler that he won. He put his arm around Tyler and guided him down the stairs. That's when he told him there was someone in the room with him and nudged him to run outside. They ran next door and asked the woman living there to call the police. The police arrived and dragged the man out in cuffs. They were terrified and relieved in equal measure. Next up at number 2 now, we have the walls. This one comes from Reddit user Helena Marlena. Now, she said that her friend Celia always used to invite her over when they were little. Celia pointed out that a hole was forming in the wall of her unfinished basement. Her parents weren't worried. As the years went by, the hole seemed to be getting bigger. They could now put their arms through it. It wasn't any wider, just deeper. At this point, Celia also told Helena that she could hear voices from her basement and that she believed it was coming from the hole. Helena never heard these sounds, but she believed her. They often had sleepovers where Celia said she could hear the voices. They would go down to the basement to find one of their many pets just standing in front of the hole, staring. Celia said she was beginning to think something lived in the walls of the house and used this hole as a sort of way to get out. She was an anxious wreck at school. Only Helena knew why. One night she was sleeping over in Celia's room. She had a huge collection of stuffed animals. In the morning, they woke up to see every stuffed animal had been perfectly arranged into a pile about 4 feet high. All of them were facing them. Some of them were on top of large wardrobes. The next night, they woke up around the same time when it was still dark. They heard a low creaking noise from below the bed. They peered under and heard one floorboard slam back onto the ground. They shot their heads back up and cried. Helena said she had never been so scared in her life and called her parents the very next morning to take her home. She refused to ever go back to Celia's house. Either way, Helena's family moved away from that place, and years on, she still wondered if Celia and her family still lived in that house and what exactly was wrong with it. And finally, number 1 now, we have Kiko. This one comes from a Reddit user called Killer Orange Cat. It's set in Osaka in Japan, where the user comes from originally. Her friend was called Kiko. Kiko's father worked in Tokyo and was never home. Her mother was a nurse who worked overnight. Kiko really didn't like being alone in her house at night, so sleepovers were common. Her parents let her stay with her most nights. One night, she and Kiko were staying in the living room watching television. Early in the night, they heard a knock at Kiko's door. They weren't expecting anyone, so Kiko didn't get up right away. However, when the knock came again, she got up and went to look through the window. No one was at the door. They immediately thought it was just kids pulling a prank. Less than 5 minutes later, though, there was another knock at the door. Just like before, they looked out and saw nobody. As they walked back to the couch, the knock came again. There really was nobody outside. As they went to the door to see who was stood outside, the knock came again, louder and faster than ever. It got faster and faster and faster. They were paralyzed with fear. Just as they thought it was all over, they heard a voice at the door. It said, "Kiko, this is your Aunt Uni. Open the door." The voice was cold, strained, and didn't sound like her aunt. That didn't matter anyway, as the aunt had actually died years before. They looked at each other in absolute horror, then quickly shut themselves in their room for the rest of the night. They couldn't hear the knocking or the voices anymore, but the memory has stayed with them forever. Alright guys, I really hope you enjoyed that, mainly because it was a very long one. I need a drink of water now. Thank you to Reddit and Mr. Nightmare and anybody else who has shared their scary sleepover stories online. Thanks to you, as always, for watching. My name is Danny Burke, and I will see you all in the next video.
At number 10, we have The Faceless Man. This one was written by a young mother whose son would talk about a creepy man he would always see in his grandparents' bedroom. That sounds completely safe and normal. Just a guy that nobody knows about hanging around in a bedroom. It sounds like he has the best intentions. Well, the little boy said even though the man was creepy, he would talk to him and he seemed like a nice guy, but he made the boy feel uncomfortable. Now, the mom knew that this couldn't be a real person, but the more and more that the little boy talked about it, the more the mother's concern grew. It seemed that every time he went to visit his grandparents, he would have an encounter with this creepy man. Eventually, the mom asked what he looked like, and the little boy said, "Oh, he doesn't have a face." That will make it easy to sleep at night. And that is making pals with your toddler.
No.
One of the toughest parts about being a parent is controlling the kids are exposed to, especially when they come from an alternate demonic universe. At number 9, we have Michael. So one of the best places to make friends is on vacation. You run into some other people who are on vacation, everyone feels loose and wild, you've got no responsibilities, maybe you all have too much to drink and everyone keeps a secret. Great times and never ending memories. Well, sometimes you meet a bunch of like-minded people ready to make mistakes, and sometimes you're a little girl and you meet an invisible boy on the beach named Michael. The Reddit user I'm Not a Crazy Person wrote a story about a boy that no one could see that she met while she was on a trip with her parents in Florida. They were all on the beach and spent the day playing with someone named Michael. When it was time to leave, she asked if Michael could come home with them. Her mom thought it was all just in her little girl's head, so she said yes. For years, she said she could play with Michael and remember it all so vividly. It was until one day that Michael said he found his family and he was going home. Was this all in the little girl's head, or was there a ghost freeloading off them for years? At number 7, we have Grateful. A young girl by the name of Ruby was interviewed for a magazine. The article was about imaginary friends. Ruby described her imaginary friend as a 14-year-old girl named Grateful who was pregnant with 2 kids and had yellow eyelashes, which let her see in the dark. It seemed like a fun character until the article was published, and then an actress by the name of Natalie Morales contacted the girl's mother through Twitter, giving her details on why this wasn't an imaginary friend, but a ghost of a pregnant who was murdered. Ooh. At number 6, we have Girl in the Closet. Next, we got what is for sure the creepiest one on the list so far. This story comes from a mom whose daughter would talk about a girl named Kelly who lived in her closet. Kelly would do pretty normal stuff. They would play together. Kelly would sometimes hang on a rocking chair, which is a huge ghost red flag. Just saying. It was all nice and normal until one day the mom was watching the Amityville Horror, starring Canadian treasure Ryan Reynolds, and her daughter walked into the room. It was during a scene where there was a girl on the screen with black pits for eyes and rotting skin. Her daughter then says that looks like Kelly, which her mom responds with, "Who's Kelly?" And her daughter replies, "Oh, Kelly's the girl who's living in my closet." I bet her mom had a great sleep that night. At number 5, we have A Family Spirit. We've got another one that we snagged right off of Reddit. Reddit is such a wonderful place. You can get everything you want. You can find illegal streaming websites, buy or sell used underwear, and even find terrifying stories about kids with demonic imaginary friends. This story was written by R. Coley32. She said her daughter told her the story about a tall man who would visit her at night. This tall man would do the sign of the cross on her forehead. If it wasn't bad enough that ghosts are coming into your home, now they're touching you, then the creepy factor got turned all the way up to 11 when her and her daughter were going through some family photos. They came across a picture of R. Crowley's late grandfather. And the little girl said that is the man that has been visiting her at night. This is where it gets good. The little girl had And when the dude was still alive, he would do the sign of the cross on all his kids' foreheads before they went to sleep. So I guess it's a little better knowing that the ghost who's coming into your house is a family member, but I don't really know. I don't know where everyone's lines are on this. At number 4, we have a family man. This one might be a real imaginary friend or demonic ghost murderer. The story comes from a sister of a little boy named Jordan, and Jordan had an imaginary friend named Roger. Roger was a family man with 9 kids, and Jordan and Roger got on fabulously, until one day when the little boy announced that Roger has gone and killed his whole family. Well, that's a very abrupt ending to a friendship. Well, this might have just all been the kid's head who didn't really understand the weight of death and murdering your 9. Or was it the ghost of a crazed man who was left behind from the murder he committed? Either way, if I have kids, I'm gonna get a tablet into their hands as fast as possible. There is no way in hell there's a ghost out there that is more entertaining than the whole internet. I don't care if you killed 10, you're not beating Netflix or Russian Dash. This one literally gave me goosebumps. This story is about a single mom and her daughter who have just moved into a new home. Not long after they settled in, the little girl started playing with an imaginary friend named Jenny. The kid's in a new place with just her and her mom, so it seemed pretty normal. One day, the unseen friend named Jenny asked the little girl if she could ask her mom if the cat could play in the basement. Her mom said yes. Why wouldn't she? This seems like a very simple request. Then the cat went missing. They couldn't find the little kitty anywhere. A couple days after the cat went missing, the little girl told her mom that Jenny wanted to play with her in the basement. The mom was really freaked out and of course said no. The next day, the little girl woke up with scratches all over her body. What the hell was going on? They did some research into what was going on in this home, and Jenny was a girl who went missing in the basement a long time ago, and no one ever found her. This was spooky as hell, so the two quickly moved out, and I'm assuming they put the house on the market for a low price. At number 2, we have the Bunny Man. Taking care of kids can be so much fun, or you could be taking care of kids that think there's a demon that looks like the Easter Bunny living in their home. This story comes from a girl who says when she was 16, she would babysit 2 twins who were terrified by a thing they called the Bunny Man. On more than one occasion, one of the twins would start screaming, claiming that the Bunny Man was in the room with him. Sometimes the other twin could sense that his brother was in trouble and tell the baby a little bit of money, but she said that when they claimed they would see him, they would be terrified. Sometimes they would even be crying. So what do you think this is? Great actors ready to go into their Oscar role? Or is this the real life Donnie Darko? At number 1, we have Mr. Man. Okay, and last on our list is the story of Mr. Man. You may have heard of this one. It was a pretty famous story on Reddit. A guy who said when he was 5 years old, he would be visited by a figure a few times a week. This would always happen when he would go to bed. He would see a tall man bald when you're dead. That's a huge bummer. This figure would never hurt him, but it would just kind of float above his bed like a really creepy roommate. Then one day, it just vanished, never came back. It wasn't until years later, when he was all grown up, that Mr. Man made his return. He saw the shadowy figure looking at him through a doorway, and then it used its ghostly powers to swing the door shut. At number 10, we have Angel. Seems like with and being like, oh, I'm the vault inspector. Nothing to see here. Just came to look at the vault and I'll be on my way. Why do you have that big bag with the dollar sign on it? Oh, no reason. That's just my bag I carry all my toys in to give to the kids at the hospital. Nothing to worry about. This one was thrown on Reddit by Redditor Sword Rallier. He wrote about when he was a kid and he had no friends, which is a very huge bummer to start this story. Well, to fight this tragic case of loseritis, he made up an imaginary friend named Angel. This was fitting because Angel was his middle name. I mean, he could have got a little more creative. You can literally name this thing whatever you want, but I'll let it slide. Well, him and Angel would play and our narrative Redditor would have a great time. That's until he started to make friends. Once he took a step out of Loserville and people started to hang out with him, Angel would get angry. He would start to cause trouble, break things, and hurt people. Sword Rallier would have to make up excuses to explain Angel's behavior. So what do you think about this? Do you think this was a demon following this poor kid around, or do you think he manifested an entity to explain his own bad behavior? Does Angel the demon not exist, and it's all just in this Redditor's head as he attacks the people around him? At number 9, we have Betsy. This story starts off when the writer of this post was only 5 years old. Her mom walked out on her sister, and her dad. It was now her dad's job to watch them both, but because of his wife started to turn to booze. After some time, they moved into a new neighborhood where the writer knew no one and quickly made friends with a young girl named Betsy. The two would play almost every day. Betsy would show her around town, and once they grew close, she went over to spend the night at Betsy's house. But eventually, Betsy moved away, and then the two lost contact. Now, years later, she's in her early 20s, and she was talking to her dad and her sister about Betsy, and they both told her that Betsy wasn't real, that she was an imaginary friend, and when she would play with her, she would just be talking to herself. This conversation turned into an argument, and then she asked her dad, well then whose house did I stay at that night? Her dad told her that that's the reason I don't drink anymore. And that's where the story ends. This one sounds a little more like it was made up with a cliffhanger, but it could be true. Demons posing as little girls so they can brainwash you until you feel safe and then try to steal you away. At number 8 we have the Green Man. This one comes way of Redditor X Riot Starter 13X. He was covered in blood. Some kids choose elephants for their imaginary friends, others have some dude who just worked a 12-hour shift in the ER. This imaginary friend would freak his parents out, so they sent him to a psychiatrist who determined that this was their son's way of dealing with his sick grandparents. He'd been spending a lot of time in hospitals visiting them, so they chalked this up to him just having a big imagination. But Riot Starter swears this guy set a place for him at the table when his family would sit down to eat, and I can't imagine a better hiding place for a demon than a hospital. So many fresh souls to torment. At number 7 we have Boy in the Tree. A father and daughter are walking through the park and they come to a tree. The little girl says, hey dad, look, there's a little boy in the tree. And the dad looks up there, but there's no one in the tree. He asks his little girl what the boy looks like, and she starts to describe him, his clothes, his shoes, his face, his hair. The dad is pretty freaked out, and then the two of them leave. That night they're back at home, and when everyone is asleep, the dad is woken up by a scream coming from his daughter's room. He runs in there, and she is in the corner crying. He asks his daughter what's wrong, and she says she told the little boy to come stay with us, and now he's not the boy. He's trying to take me away. Thankfully, the dad was quick to act. He had the house blessed, and then there was no sign of the boy anymore. But he never forgot the scream that woke him up that night. Spooky. At number 6, we have Alfred. I grabbed this one off of Reddit, and it kind of makes my skin crawl. This Redditor wrote about an old man that would visit them during the day, and his name was Alfred. He would sit by her while she watched TV and her mom was making dinner. Her mom never thought anything of this because she was a very young girl. She was only about 5 at the time. But every now and again, Alfred would tell her to stop watching TV and go play in the yard, to go dig in the dirt. She would tell him no because she didn't want to get dirty before dinner. So Alfred started showing up at night and in the morning, trying to get the girl to play in the dirt in the backyard. She would ignore him, but after her and her mom moved out, the house got demolished for a new build. When they dug up the ground, they found 4 bodies of people who previously lived in the house. You think Alfred was trying to warn her or show her where he wanted her to end up? At number 5, we have The Children. This person wrote about the home she grew up in where there was so much paranormal activity she had to move out. When she was just a young girl, probably around 3 or 4, she would see small children run through the house. Not completely, but just glimpses, them running down hallways, sometimes in the backyard. This would increase more and more until she started to play with them. They would partake in games, and her parents never really thought it was weird because they lived in such a secluded area. So it'd be normal for a young girl to make up some imaginary friends to play with. As she played with them more and more, they asked her to start to do dangerous things, like take knives from the kitchen and hide them in her room, or take a lighter and burn the drapes. She was young, but she knew this behavior was wrong, so she denied them. Then things started to get bad. Loud bangs could be heard throughout the house at night, and on more than one occasion, the little girl woke up screaming with scratches on her body. The children would talk to her and tell her that they would hurt her family unless she listened. Throughout these paranormal activities, she told her family that it was these children, but they didn't want to believe her until her mother saw them. Late one night, she looked out the kitchen window and saw what had to be a dozen children staring back at her with black pits for eyes. They moved out shortly after that. Can't blame you. At number 4, we have Hook. This next one is going to make you feel so helpless. Dominic wrote this, and he said when he was a kid, he would visit his grandparents quite often. If he ever went into the basement, he would see a man there who he called Hook because he was always carrying around a long curved hook. The man didn't talk, but he would smile at the boy. He told his grandparents about him, but they just laughed. They thought it was just a child's imagination. Eventually, they got a little worried, so they brought a priest in to see if he could do anything. After the priest came in to visit, Hook told Dominic that his grandparents were going to go away because they were trying to get rid of him. The next week, both his grandparents died in their sleep. He never went back to the home because he was too afraid. But the house still stands, and there's people living there right now. At number 3, we have Scotty. Be careful who your friends are or you can end up with a situation like this. The person writing the story said that they were in elementary school at the time, and himself and his friend Ryan befriended a new friend, a very quiet, very awkward kid named Andrew. He didn't really talk to people in class, he would often talk to himself, but it seemed like he was engaged, like someone was there. After the writer and Ryan got to know Andrew a little bit more, they decided to have a sleepover at Andrew's house. They had fun during the day, but that night they were all sleeping in Andrew's living room. A writer was woken up by Andrew standing over him and making a high-pitched squeaking noise. This was so loud that it woke up Ryan sleeping next to him. The two of them were frozen with fear as Andrew squeaked. The noise slowly died down until Andrew was silent, and then he said, "Scotty wants you to leave." The two boys were so freaked out that they got up to go tell Andrew's mom, but as soon as they moved, Andrew let out a booming scream. It was so loud that the boys started to tremble, and Andrew's mom came bolting down the stairs. When she came into the room, she flipped on the lights, and that's when they saw scratches all over Andrew's arms. Andrew's mom then held him down and kept repeating, "Scotty isn't real, Scotty isn't real." After Andrew calmed down, she drove both the boys home. Then they didn't talk to him for a long time, and finally when they did, he said, "Don't worry, Scotty's gone now." At number 2, we have Bad Friend. It's always nice to get a scare when you're visiting someone's home. A young man was having dinner at his professor's house with his professor's wife, Susan, and his son, Jacob. During the dinner, Jacob kept looking into the hallway nervously. The writer of this story could tell that Jacob was frightened because of the look on his face. The professor eventually asked his son if he was seeing one of his friends in the hallway. The boy said yes, and the professor said, "A good friend or a bad friend?" And Jacob answered back, "Bad friend." So our visitor asked the young boy, "Why is he a bad friend?" To which the boy said, "Sharp hands." Yeah, that's gonna be the last time I come over for dinner. And for the number 1 spot, we have Maury. A guy came to a dude's house, he found out that he was the father. Whoa, I'm just kidding. Our final story comes from Reddit, and I think it's the freakiest one we've had in the series so far. This takes place in Florida, where a girl was visiting her little cousin and her aunt and uncle. She was spending a week there. The first day, everything went normal until it was time to sleep, because she had to sleep in the attic. Not super creepy, because the attic had been refinished, and it was actually pretty nice. What was weird was how she was woken up. That night, her little cousin woke her up standing right next to her bed. It was 3 a.m. and she was a little shocked, but she stayed up talking to him. He kept talking about a friend named Maury who lived in his room with him. This happened a couple more times, so she decided to ask her aunt and uncle about his imaginary friend. They both had never heard of him, and her cousin denied it. That night she was woken up again, but this time her cousin wasn't friendly. He was very angry, and he kept asking, "Why did you tell them?" Eventually, he calmed down and went back to bed. Night, she was woken up by a thumping under her bed. She was terrified, but she went to see what was under there, and she saw her cousin curled up in a ball. And he said, "I have to stay here so Maury doesn't hurt you. He wants to hurt you." This obviously scared the crap out of her, so she ran out of the attic and out of the house. Her aunt and uncle came out and found her outside. The creepiest part about this whole story is years later, she brought it up with her aunt and uncle and cousin, and all of them denied it and said that none of it ever happened.
At number 8, we have Emily. Now, this one comes from Redditor Good Day Brittany, who said when her little sister was about 6 or 7, she had an imaginary friend called Emily. Seems innocent enough. Emily lived in the sister's closet, had long dark hair, and wore a black dress, so basically she was a scary hoe. Either way, the sister played with Emily 24/7 and then started getting weird. The sister would just be sitting in the middle of her room talking to Emily and acting just bizarre. One day, their brother passed her room and she turned around and hissed at him, and he swore the girl looking at him looked nothing like his sister. He ran and told their parents, and all he could hear was their little sister screaming, "Get out," over and over again. Both siblings went to her room and saw her crying in their parents' arms. They actually never asked her about it until she was 24, and she admitted that Emily used to tell her to do horrible things to herself. There were times she'd wake up on the roof and have no idea how she got there. When the family moved house, the whole Emily situation ended, so honestly, I have a strong feeling that Emily was the ghost of a girl that actually lived in that house. Or she was just a very messed up, very convincing imaginary friend. It's one or the other. Filling our number 7 slot is David. So this one was shared by an anonymous person who said when he was young, he'd play with himself a lot until his imaginary friend showed up. And I love how he's saying it like he was waiting for him to show up, like me, just imagine him into being there. Either way, the user played with his friend all the time, and one morning he was talking to him in the kitchen, and his mum asked who he was talking to. Now he replied saying, "I'm talking to David, he looks just like me and likes cuddling at night." His mum then asked where David was from, and the boy replied, "He's from your belly too. We played together in there, and then he left, but now he's back." It wasn't until sophomore year that the user actually found out the truth about David. In French class in high school, they were told to choose a different name in class, and so he chose David, and so when he took his grade book home and his mum saw the name David base product, she burst into tears. David was actually the user's stillborn twin brother, and for some reason, maybe a miracle, the user's imaginary friend was him without him even knowing it. Now at number 6 is Tony. Now this one comes from a dad who said when his son was 4, he would always ask who the girl down the hall was. Mind you, there was no girl down the hall, and this really freaked the kid's parents out. The next day they asked him what she looked like, and he said flat. I have no idea what that means, but sure, she's flat, we'll take it. A few months go by, and at this point the kid has started asking about the girl less and less. One day the couple were actually curious and asked their son whatever happened to that girl, to which he said, "She's Tony's sister." He says hi. The dad was shocked because Tony was his childhood best friend, and the dad actually saw Tony's little sister get run over by a car, and then Tony later killed himself. So his son's imaginary friend or imaginary ghost friend was this girl, and now we know why she was flat, because she was run over. And now this list is making me confused as to whether these imaginary friends are imaginary friends or are they ghosts. At number 4 are the grandparents. Now this was shared by an anonymous person who said his ex-wife's brother had a pair of twin daughters. Now the brother's parents had been dead for ages, so the little girls actually never met them. As a sort of nostalgic task, someone showed them a picture of their grandparents, and the girls replied with, "Oh, we know them, they play with us all the time." And this was already after them constantly talking to things that aren't there, or people rather that aren't there, so this is sus. Later on, the whole family, including the brother's family, went on a retreat to a lake once, and the person's wife snapped a picture of the two girls, and one of them is literally sitting down in mid-air. Like, the person showed the picture to the girl's dad, and then he asked his levitating daughter what the hell was going on. Obviously, he asked her nicer than I just said it, and she replied saying the lady said it was slippery and told me to sit on her lap so I wouldn't fall in. And honestly, you guys, I really don't know if the image is photoshopped or not. Like, I'm not versed in Photoshop enough to know, so what do you guys think? Is it photoshopped? Is it not? And I mean, this one's kind of cute, because I mean, the imaginary friends are their grandparents, but then again, if they're not imaginary and they're just actually ghosts haunting their grandkids, that is bloody scary. Like, what is with that? Go to the light already. Filling our number 3 slot is Ben. Now this one comes from Redditor Omega Weapon, who said when he was about 4 years old, he used to hear voices. They'd say things like, "Is he asleep yet? No, he's just pretending," and so forth. The user would hear their footsteps and laughter, and he just assumed they were bad dreams or just evil imaginary friends. The user used to call them the bad boys in the kitchen, and fast forward 35 years, the user is now 39 and has his own 6-year-old son. One day his son told him his imaginary friend Ben told him that he used to make the dad poop his pants as a kid. The dad laughed it off, but after his son gave him a very accurate description of his old house and even mentioned the bad boys in the kitchen, the dad was no longer laughing. No one is laughing at this point. Except maybe Ben. He literally froze and felt like he was 4 again and told the son that Ben was a jealous liar and not to listen to him. But can you imagine? Like, the imaginary friends you used to have as a kid that used to terrorize you didn't just leave you in childhood, they came back to screw with your kid. Like, really? How creepy. Am I the only one? Now at number 2 is Anna. So this one comes from Lynn Gallagher's book, Psychic Kids, which talks about unexplained incidents with kids, and boy, there are a lot. Now this story tackles the couple Lorenda and Ben and their 6-year-old daughter, Anna. Now the family had just moved into an old Victorian-era house, and a few months in, Anna started mentioning a girl called Jess. Anna said there was a dollhouse in the house that Jess didn't want her to play with, and so she listened, but then things slowly started getting worse. She would stop letting the family dog into her room because Jess was scared of it, which Lorenda found very odd. She spoke to Ben about it, who brushed it off, saying imaginary friends are just part of growing up, and I mean, yeah, you're not wrong, Ben. It is part of growing up, but not like this. Months went by, and Anna's complaints about Jess grew, but Lorenda was more chilled out about it. She was like, whatevs, doesn't even matter. Until one night, things went to shit. There was a storm, and so the lights went out in their house. Very horror movie-esque, I know. Either way, Lorenda went into the living room with candles because Anna was asleep on the couch. She walked in to find a little girl sitting on the floor next to Anna, singing a lullaby and stroking her hair. Now, Lorenda screamed her lungs out, and their dog started barking at the girl on the carpet as well. That's when the girl realized she had been seen and ran to the door, let out the most blood-curdling scream, and then vanished. But not before leaving a pool of blood on the floor. And I'm like, hold up, Anna, was this an imaginary friend or was it a ghost? Like, what are we working with here, buddy? Like, what is going on? And finally, at number 1 is January Schofield, and this one blew my mind, you guys. So by the time January was 4 years old, she had so many imaginary friends that her parents had lost count. But they weren't even the cute kind that she played dolls with, they were the bad kind that told her to hurt the family dog and her baby brother. She was so under the spell of her friends that she was adamant on hurting her baby brother, so much so that her dad would have to hold her down and she would proceed to bite him wherever she could. Now, at school, she would throw herself at doors and windows, and these angry fits would only last a few minutes, but they would terrify everyone involved. No one understood what she was doing. No one understood she was a prodigy. She could speak grammatically correctly before she was 2 years old, and by the time she was 4, she had the mental age of an 11-year-old. But even then, she had no real friends. She'd only hang out with her imaginary friends, which included animals as well. She wouldn't even let her parents call her January, and at 6 years old, she actually tried to take her own life. She tried throwing herself out of a window and herself with her own sleeves. Realizing things were very, very wrong, her parents took her to countless psychiatrists, and it was finally found out that January didn't have any imaginary friends. Diagnosed. So she was genuinely seeing and hearing people that weren't there, but in her reality, they were there. Starting us off at number 10 is Kelly. Now, this one was shared by Reddit user BrownXCode, who said when his daughter was about 3 years old, she had an imaginary friend called Kelly who conveniently lived in her closet. Kelly was a nice friend, you know, she played with the girl, she sat in her rocking chair watching over her sleep, and so forth. Either way, 2 years later, the parents are watching the Amityville Horror, the movie about the Amityville hauntings, and there's a scene where this dead girl goes all black-eyed. I haven't seen the movie per se, but the user just said this is what happened, so I'm going to trust them. Now, at that moment in the movie, their daughter comes into the room pointing to the girl saying, "Oh, that looks like Kelly." And the parents are like, "Who the hell's Kelly?" And she replied, "Oh, you know the dead girl that lives in my closet." I don't even understand how that even happened. How is the girl from Amityville in your closet if you're not even in the Amityville house? Make it make sense. Coming in at number 9 is Ruby. Back in May of 2018, actress Natalie Morales posted a photo on Twitter about kids writing and drawing about their imaginary friends. In one terrifying account, we have 3-year-old Ruby who drew a pregnant red stick figure with yellow eyes. Her description said this is my imaginary mum, grateful. Her yellow eyelashes mean she can see in the dark. She only comes to see me at nighttime. It scares me sometimes, but I always want her to come back. She has 2 babies in her belly. She's 14 but can never have a birthday. Like, Ruby, sweetie, something isn't right, isn't it? That's too specific of a description for a 3-year-old. I feel like this is the ghost of a 14-year-old girl who maybe got like a then pregnant and then, I don't know, that is the worst case scenario, but my mind has to go there, doesn't it? When it comes to ghosts, I just think they've had a really bad death. And really, they could have gone peacefully. At number 8, we have Mary. So this one was shared by an anonymous person who said their 2-year-old daughter had an imaginary friend who she played with quite a bit. The parents would watch her from the baby monitor and find it cute how she kept herself entertained with things like that. A few months of this went on until one Saturday morning. The parents overheard their daughter saying, "What? Okay, I'll tell her." And then the daughter walked over to the parents' room and told the mum, "Mary says you're doing a good job." And Mary was the name of the kid's grandma, who she was really close to before she had died. So this imaginary friend was really just the ghost of her grandmother. I mean, it could be worse. Could be Zozo the demon. We don't like that, do we? We like Mary the grandma. Filling out number 7 is Emily, shared by Redditor Good Day Brittany. She said when her sister was about 6, she had an imaginary friend called Emily. Emily lived in the sister's closet, had long dark hair, and wore a black dress, so she was either Wednesday Addams or a demon. There's no in between. Either way, the sister played with Emily 24/7, and then things started getting really weird. The sister would just be sitting in the middle of her room talking to Emily and acting very strange and bizarre. One day, their brother passed her room, and she turned turned around and hissed at him, and he swore the girl that was looking at him looked nothing like his sister. He went to tell their parents, and all he could hear was his sister screaming, "Get out," over and over again in a very deep voice. And last time I checked, 6-year-olds do not have deep voices, so riddle me that. Either way, after that, the siblings never asked her about it again until she was 24, and she admitted that Emily used to tell her to do horrible things to herself, and there were even times she'd wake up on the roof and have no idea how she got there, but she was just too scared to say anything. When the family moved house, Emily sort of just disappeared, and honestly, I have a very strong feeling that Emily was the ghost of a girl that actually lived in that house. But I'm no expert. I feel like I should be though by now. By now. Put some respect on my name. At number 4 is Jonathan. Now, 3-year-old Rebecca was super stoked to tell her parents about her new friend, Jonathan. The parents thought it was cute and all and left it to her own devices. Rookie mistake, people, you never do that. Months went by and Rebecca started getting weirdly obsessed with the closet in her room and eventually told her parents that Jonathan was in there. Again, they ignored her because let's face it, she's 3 and is probably just talking a bunch of baby shit. Let's be real. Now, a few more months go by and Rebecca's mum becomes pregnant, so the family move into a bigger house to accommodate the growing family. With the new house, Rebecca completely forgot about Jonathan until 4 months later when a new family moved into their old house. They ended up contacting Becca's dad, saying they had found a trap door in the back of Rebecca's closet, and under it was a hole. And inside that hole was a box that had Jonathan written on it, and inside of that was a bunch of baby's clothes and pictures. Now, I'm no ghost expert, but you definitely have a haunting on your hands, my friend. This is definitely a haunting. And I have a lot of expertise to back me up. I am professional. Although I look like Blossom from the Powerpuff Girls right now, but I am a professional, I assure you. Filling at number 3 slot is Anna. This one's from Lynn Gallagher's book, Psychic Kids, which discusses unexplained incidents with kids. This particular story tackles couple Lorenda and Ben and their 6-year-old daughter, Anna. The trio had just moved into an old Victorian-era house, and a few months in, Anna starts mentioning a girl called Jess. Anna said there was a dollhouse in the house that Jess didn't want her to play with, and so she listened. But then it got worse, and it almost seemed like Jess started controlling Anna. She would stop letting the family dog into her room because Jess was scared of it, which Lorenda found really odd. She spoke to Ben, who brushed it off, saying imaginary friends are part of growing up, and I mean, fair, Ben, you're not wrong. He ain't wrong, Ben. Months went by with the incidents getting worse and worse until one fateful night. There was a storm and the lights had gone out in the house. Lorenda went into the living room with candles because Anna was asleep on the couch, but when she walked in, she saw a little girl sitting on the floor next to Anna, singing a lullaby and stroking her hair. In the flesh, a little girl. No imagination. Lorenda obviously screamed and their dog started barking at the girl on the floor. That's when the girl...
What's up, Veda? Not much, man. Just coloring this here picture. And listening to really fucked up ghost stories. Alone in the room, in a dark house. Kinda creeping me out a little bit. Might light some sage. Like, I legit keep feeling like there's somebody standing behind me. And I don't like it. So I may be getting some sage. But that is what we have so far. Yeah, it's creepy as shit. And it doesn't help that my house is actually haunted. Which is a pretty good reason for me not to be listening to ghost stories. But, I guess you could say I'm glutton. Glutton for punishment, I guess.
Elle realized she'd been seen and ran to the door. I really hope they moved house. This one was shared by Reddit Chilcello, who said when her niece was 4 years old, an imaginary friend. The niece would watch Scooby-Doo with the friend, do naughty things, and imaginary friend, and so forth. So the user decided to ask more about this friend. They said that she was a girl and that she was also dead. The user took that on the chin and asked if the friend had a job, to which the niece said, yes, she does what my daddy does. AKA the friend was a cop since her dad was a cop. Continuing on, she asked where the imaginary friend worked, and she said right next to where my daddy is a policeman. I met her when I was in mummy's belly. She touched it when I was inside. Hold up, little girl. Backtrack there. What was that? Apparently, a few months before the niece was born, the user's cousin Tracy had been hit by a train and killed. She was a cop, she loved Scooby-Doo, and worked in your dad's police station. So this imaginary friend just turned out to be the user's dead cousin, Tracy. There's a lot of dead family members coming back. I see a trend, do you?
Starting off this countdown, we have the two men. Mother of 6, Katie Jones, got really creeped out when her young daughter would talk about people that she couldn't see. Since the age of 2, apparently her daughter Alice would talk about the people in her house. One time she started to cry. When asked what was wrong, she said, "There's 2 men in my room staring and shouting at me. I don't like it." So this poor girl was being haunted by 2 older men. Not only that, but there was a girl named Sheila that would apparently sit at the bottom of her bed and just cry for her mom. Well, upon doing research, Katie found that a girl named Sheila was house. Now, here's where it gets a little more lighthearted. After being haunted for months by these ghosts, Alice said that her grandmother came and told them to go away, and they did. So, isn't that kind of sweet? Like, her grandmother is still watching over her. In our 9th spot, we have the Midnight Girl. And if you guys are liking this video so far, then make sure to give it a big thumbs up because it really helps us out. According to mother of 3, Tracy, when her daughter was 4 years old, she would tell her about her little friend that wanted to play games with her. The only thing is, she constantly wanted to play and wouldn't leave her daughter alone. She especially wanted to play these games at midnight, which is really creepy. But anyways, Tracy actually resolved this issue by leaving the ghost some toys to play with in the closet upstairs. And it worked. In the morning, the toys would be completely moved around. At least we know that this ghost is on the friendlier side. Because at first I was getting scared about the games that she wanted the girl to play with her, especially at midnight. Moving on to number 8, we have the Green Man. This kid's imaginary friend is probably the creepiest one on this list. Why? Well, according to him, his friend was a tall male doctor that would be dressed in bloody scrubs and would wear a medical mask. If I saw that as a child, it would have severely messed me up. But anyways, he called this guy the Green Man because the green scrubs he was wearing. Now, of course, his parents didn't believe him, so he was sent to a psychiatrist to try to talk about his problems. The psychiatrist said that the man was just a figment of his imagination, created to help him cope with the loss of his grandparents and the amount of time that he spent in the hospital with them. But to this day, he knows that the Green Man wasn't made up. He remembers him vividly standing behind him a lot and having his hand constantly on his shoulder, which is super creepy. Coming in at number 7, we have the Easter Bunny. This next individual had the Easter Bunny as their imaginary friend. But this Easter Bunny wouldn't give out chocolate or candy. No. In fact, It was just a man in an Easter bunny costume, and it would scare him and his twin brother. One day he was sitting on the couch with his cousin when his twins started yelling, "He's in here, he's in here," referring to the creepy ghost bunny man that was haunting them. They were constantly being frightened by this man that would show itself at random times of the day and night. I'm just wondering who this dude is. Like, did he pass away while en route to a kid's Easter party? Or like, do you have wardrobe options in the afterlife and he decided to wear a bunny costume? In our sixth spot, we have the girl down the hall. When this boy was 4 years old, he used to always ask his mom who the girl was down the hall. If my kid ever said anything like that, I'd pack my bags and leave ASAP. And honestly, his mom was very frightened about it because obviously they couldn't see anyone standing in the hallway. One day, she finally decided to ask more about this girl. Well, her son described the girl as being flat. He then said, "She's Tony's sister." Well, the mom's best friend when she was little was a boy named Tony. Tony's sister got run over by a car, hence why this girl appeared to be flat. Now at our fifth and halfway mark with the babysitter. Honestly, there are way too many creepy stories involving kids and babysitters, so I'm just happy I never had to be one. Well, according to this individual, the kids she used to babysit had multiple imaginary friends. All of them were dead. One was an old lady and one had no head, with his insides sticking out of his neck. He described both of them as being covered in blood. Excuse me? How do kids see this stuff and like not get terrified by it? Like, this kid was being haunted by someone with no head that was oozing blood, and he would like talk about it no problem, as if it's just a normal thing for people to be seeing. And at number 4, we have the friend named Robert. This next individual had an imaginary friend named Robert. Robert apparently haunted him for years. Now, it's believed that Robert passed away in a fire. They figured this out because whenever they would turn on their fireplace, he would get mad. The kid would then freak out and demand that they turn it off because Robert doesn't like fire. He would say things like, "Robert says fire burns." I mean, I feel bad for Robert. You can tell he's not trying to be scary. Just don't have matches, lighters, or fireplaces in your house and he'll let you live in peace. Moving on to number 3, we have the woman in white. Okay, I lied. This one is probably the creepiest imaginary friend someone has ever had. So when this next individual was 3 or 4 years old, he was haunted by a woman with black hair, pale skin, super red lips, and green eyes. According to him, she would be dressed in all white and would appear on the ceiling of his room or sitting above his curtains. But the scariest place he saw her was on the hood of his car while his family was driving. Imagine that, like the car's driving and just this woman is just sitting there staring at you. No one else can see them. So she would always appear at the most random times in the most random places, and it would terrify him every time he saw her. One time his mother told him to ask her what this woman wanted. Her response was, "I'm just watching." Yeah. No,
Oh,
thank
hell
you.
no.
In our second spot, we have the possession. Latoya Amons had to deal with something no mom would ever think they would have to deal with. All 3 of her kids got possessed. But for a while, no one believed her until they saw the kids themselves. So it started off with a lot of black flies being around the house that they just started renting. From there, the family would see shadowy figures lurking around. One night, one of her daughters screamed for her mom. When she came in, she saw one of her daughters levitating above her bed. 3 days later, all 3 of her kids became possessed by the imaginary friend that they saw. Their eyes would be bulged and they spoke in deep voices, you know, the typical possessed stuff. At one point, one of the kids literally walked up the wall, literally just like in The Exorcist. Finally, a priest came to the rescue and was able to cast out all the evil inside of them. And in our number 1 spot, we have the dead friends. Back in 2018, a woman named Rebecca Evans was interviewed by a bunch of reporters because she claimed her 3-year-old daughter, Rosalind, could see dead people. One day, Rosalind told her mom that she's got new best friends. She said one of her friends' name was Tilly and the other's name was Alex. Said that both of them live in the house with them and that they are both dead. Imagine how creeped out her mom must have felt when she heard that. But that's not all. She also said that Alex's mom and granddad both died in the house as well. So you got not one ghost that's haunting your child, you got 4. In an article, Rosalind's mom, Rebecca, said that she never talked to Rosalind about death or the afterlife. afterlife. So hearing this from her was quite shocking. So eventually she did do some digging, and the house they live in dates back to the 1500s. In 1861, there was a 10-year-old boy named Alexander Turner that lived there. And in 1891, there was a 20-year-old woman named Matilda Oak that lived there. So there you go. That's her imaginary friends, Alex and Tilly.
Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have Purple Mommy. Starting off strong. This was a story that was posted to Reddit by the user Professor_Dog, and they wrote, quote, Purple Mommy. When my son was first learning to talk, he would tell us about something called Purple Mommy. It could be an imaginary friend, but these details are a little bit creepy. Purple Mommy is all purple with long hair and bright white eyes. At the time, he mixed up purple with black, so he could have meant that she was all black. Purple Mommy picks him up at night and turns off the lights. We would often find my son out of his crib in the morning, which would mean him crawling over the railing into the ground at a time when he was barely walking. Definitely found the lights off in his room a few times too, even though he's terrified of the dark. Purple Mommy needs a bandage because she has blood everywhere. Purple Mommy has no smile, meaning that she has no mouth. Purple Mommy can take her head off. Purple Mommy really doesn't like Daddy. He told us all of this stuff for maybe a year or a little more. If we ever asked where she was, he'd always point to the same spot, a corner of the room behind his open closet door. He would also wake up crying almost every night during this time. Once, during a really rough night, my wife went to ask him what's wrong, and his answer was, Purple Mommy won't let me sleep. I'm not gonna lie, Purple Mommy sounds absolutely terrifying. In our number 9 spot today, we have Kelly. This story starts off when someone who we'll call Marissa realized that their daughter had an imaginary friend named Kelly. Kelly apparently lived in Marissa's daughter's closet, which sounds kind of creepy, but I guess even imaginary friends need a home, so who am I to judge? Kelly liked to sit in the rocking chair while the daughter did pretty much anything. Sleeping, playing, you know it. Kelly was in the rocking chair. This friendship went on for quite a while, but it eventually faded away as most imaginary friendships do. Flash forward 2 years later, and Marissa is watching the new Amityville horror movie with her husband. Marissa's daughter walks into the living room at the exact moment in the movie where the dead girl has completely black eyes, and instead of being absolutely terrified, the daughter looks at the screen and says, "Hey, that's Kelly." Marissa, at this point, had totally forgotten about the imaginary friend and said, "Kelly who?" And the daughter replied, "The dead girl that lived in my closet." Maybe Kelly wasn't as imaginary as we all once thought. In our number 8 spot today, we have Paris Jarris. Reddit user Biggest Parrot told the internet a story about an imaginary friend her sister had called Paris Jarris. They wrote, quote, "My dad had built her a small playhouse in our backyard where my mom could see her and hear her while she was in the kitchen. My sister would have tea parties and such with her imaginary friend. One day, Mom heard her say, 'Don't worry, as long as I'm alive, they won't hurt you.' She paused and said, 'Well, if you do that, then I can't help you. It's not nice to kill people.' When my mom asked her what that was about, my sister said, 'Sometimes I have to tell Paris to be a nice person or he can't visit anymore.' I have to ask, what do you even say to that? I mean, I'm glad she knows that Paris Jarris is wrong for that, but I would be absolutely terrified of whatever the hell was going on there." The Reddit user finishes the post by saying, "We moved not long afterwards and she didn't get a new playhouse." Yeah, can't say I blame anyone for that. Hopefully Paris Jarris stayed behind in that house. In our number 7 spot today, we have Arlo. One day, a couple's young daughter started talking about her new friend, Arlo. Arlo was apparently quite funny, and the daughter would often tell her parents stories of the things that they would do together. The parents assumed Arlo was a friend from school for a while, but then it came to their attention that there was no Arlo at the girls' school. Okay, so who is Arlo and where did they come from? Flash forward to when the weather started getting warmer, and the ice cream man started coming around the neighborhood. The daughter was asking about who this man was and why he was playing music, and the parents just didn't want her to start asking for ice cream 10 times a day, so they told a little white lie. They told her that he was the music man, and that he just comes by to play music for everyone. During this time, the pandemic was in full effect, so the family was in lockdown and they weren't seeing anyone else or any other friends. A few weeks go by, and then one day, as the ice cream man comes to the neighborhood, the daughter hears the music, and that's when she looks at her parents and says, "Oh, it's the ice cream man. I know he sells ice cream and that he's not the music man." Apparently, Arlo told her that her parents had lied when they told her that he was the music man. This is when her parents asked her, "Where does Arlo live?" And the daughter replied, "In my closet." In our number 6 spot today, we have Jacob. Reddit user Lil Pig Perez shared a story that involved her niece and her imaginary friend during a trip for ice cream. A lot of ice cream references. She wrote, quote, "As I started driving, my niece asks if Jacob, imaginary friend, could get an ice cream too. I jokingly said, Jacob can get his own ice cream. I laughed and said, just kidding, we'll get Jacob an ice cream." She didn't respond, so I looked in the rearview mirror. I couldn't see very much because it was kind of dark, but what I could see was my niece's face. She looked angry, and I was about to reassure her that I was kidding, but I realized that she wasn't looking at me. She was looking at something near my ear, towards the back of my head. Then she said, "I said no, Jacob. Be nice." No, she didn't mean it. Either that is one terrifying demon of a friend, or this niece has quite an active imagination and a strong desire for extra ice cream. In our number 5 spot today, we have Mr. No Face. This story comes from Reddit and was posted by the user Legacy of Potato about their daughter Emma's new friend. When the announcement of this new friend came, Emma explained to her mom that her new friend, who Emma's mom immediately knew was imaginary, was called Mr. No Face. Okay. It's a bit creepy, but not a reason to freak out. Emma's mom asked a few questions about Mr. No Face, which Emma answered, but then she began to get nervous and quickly shuffled off to her room. Her mom called her back, but Emma just didn't listen, which was extremely unlike her. The next day, Emma's school called and said that the mom needed to set up a meeting to come and talk about Emma. When Emma's mom asked Emma why her school would be calling, Emma insisted that they were making up lies about her, and that she was especially upset that they had apparently told her that Mr. No Face wasn't real. The next day, Emma's mom went to the school to speak with the teacher, and the teacher explained that Emma was exhibiting some strange and disturbing behavior and asked if she had been watching any horror films lately. Emma's mom began to get defensive and asked for more explanations as to what the teacher could possibly be talking about. The teacher said that Emma had been talking to someone named Mr. No Face. Okay, it's an imaginary friend. Kids have those. What could possibly be so bad? The teacher then went on to explain that Emma had been acting out and that she had been drawing some really gory pictures and telling the other students that Mr. No Face wants their blood. The mother couldn't believe what she was hearing, and she raced home to ask Emma about these accusations. When she arrived home, her mother, Emma's grandmother, who had been looking after Emma, looked pale white, like she had just seen a ghost. Emma's mom ran to the kitchen, and it was there that she saw Emma. Emma turned around to face her, and her neck was cracking. Once she turned around, Emma's mom saw that her eyes were now pitch black. Emma spoke in a low, guttural voice and said, "He wants blood. Yours will be shed." The mother screamed, "Give me my daughter back," and Emma replied, "She's mine." The Redditor ends off the post by saying, if your child has an imaginary friend with no face, run. In our number 4 spot today, we have Spider Hands. Posted by the user Not Another Whatever, they wrote, "My sister Ashley used to get visited at night by a dead girl with long dark hair and spider hands. Yes, this predated The Ring. Yes, I'm old AF. She moved out the second she turned 18, never looked back. 20 odd years later, our half-brother Trevor moved into her old room. It wasn't long after Trev started sleeping on the sofa or with the lights on and told us about his new friend that he didn't like. She was a dead girl who had long dark hair, an old nightgown, and spider hands. Needless to say, none of us offered to trade rooms with him. I guess this is less of an imaginary friend story because it seems like no one wanted to be friends with the girl. And honestly, I'm not sure
Mr. No Face would be what you got when you turned around and said, "Give me blood." I'd be like, "No." And then you would have the face of being told no. Some of these are Mr. No Face. I mean, they are imaginary friends, but you would think if the imaginary friends were there, they would tell you what their name was and not be stuck with a name like Mr. No Face. Some of these you can tell are not altogether factual.
that I could possibly blame them. In our number 3 spot today, we have Dawn.
Yeah.
Science Nerd 86
They're
posted this
entertaining
story
to
about his
laugh at,
daughter and
though.
how one day she randomly started talking about a man named Dawn. They wrote, "She always described him in the same way and didn't seem scared at all despite bringing him up every day. She didn't go to daycare and we didn't know anyone named Dawn. Then one day, she got completely freaked out, wouldn't walk around the house alone in case she ran into Don, wouldn't sleep in her own room, and would talk about how she hated him because he said mean words to her all the time. About a year after Mean Don, we bought a new house. Once we moved, she never spoke of him again. Honestly, while all of that was happening, it would obviously be very concerning and frightening, but perhaps not as frightening as when you realized that she had stopped seeing him after the move. Like a sense of relief, but also a sense of, what the hell just happened? It's almost like a demon confirmation, you know? In our number 2 spot today, we have the Bunny Man. This story starts off when our storyteller was looking after some twins. The twins constantly spoke of a man who was in a Easter bunny costume, and they were both absolutely terrified of him. Of course, all the adults really just brushed this off, assuming it was some imaginary person that the boys made up together. One day, while the babysitter was looking after the boys, one of the boys was in the shower while the other one and the babysitter were downstairs watching TV. The one twin watching TV said, "You need to go check on Matt," referring to the twin in the shower. And at the same time, Matt, the one in the shower, began shrieking, "He's in here, he's in here." The babysitter booked it upstairs and had to check every single room before Matt would calm down. Who is this bunny man, and how are both twins seeing him? And how did the one twin know he was around just seconds before the other one started yelling? All I know is that I feel extremely bad for Matt, because a creepy stranger dressed in a bunny costume who appears in the bathroom while you're showering is enough to scare absolutely anyone. In our number 1 spot today,
I'm sorry, but I was terrified of a grown-ass man wearing a bunny costume, too. I can't really say anything. Oh, no. The bunny man cometh. Here too the bunny man cometh. Oh no, the bunny man. Is it kind of like the fucking Muffin Man, but like with a twist? Goddamn furries infiltrate everything. Can't even listen to my paranormal stories without a goddamn fuzzy. I'd be fucking terrified if I... if can you imagine getting up in the middle of the night and there's a grown-ass man in a bunny outfit. Woogity, woogity, woogity. I'm sorry. I'm going to hell. That would be a lot more intimidating than a fucking bunny man. I swear to God. Oh no, I've got the giggles. Robin's gonna start laughing.
The Hat Man. This story reads, when my son was about 3 years old, we were living...
Oh no! She said the Hat Man. Hat Man, are you out there terrorizing children again? Now, Hat Man, we've talked about this. You've got to stop. You gotta stop terrorizing people out there, Hat Man. People are telling me. That's what she said. She says the Hat Man. The Hat Bunny Man. Yes, there is, later. I'm dying.
With my mom in an older apartment. I had always gotten a weird vibe from it. The atmosphere felt heavy and a little oppressive, but I assumed it was just because of the age. However, my son started waking up in the middle of the night and would talk to his friend. who he described as the Hat Man. He would also wake up and tell Hat Man that he didn't want to go play with him because he was supposed to be asleep and that he'd
Hat Man? No, he said he didn't want to play with you. Why are you terrorizing people? Tisk tisk, Hat Man. What have we told you about this? We knew all your secrets would come out eventually. Your secret, Hat Man. They're telling on you. I'm crying.
see him tomorrow. This was always followed by him waking me up and asking for a glass of water. I knew it wasn't just an imaginary friend when one night I heard him talking, and when he said he
Hat Man, go get your own glass of water. Why are you waking people up for this shit? We don't want to play with you because it's bedtime. I'm sorry. I'm going to hell.
He'd see him tomorrow, the door to his room closed on its own. This stopped completely once we moved out. The door closing literally just gives me chills. Full-on poltergeist vibes. Moving was definitely a good choice, and I'm glad that the Hat Man stayed behind.
Starting off this countdown, we have the ghost named Jason. Between 1908 to 1911, the New York State Education Building was constructed. But apparently, it's haunted by a ghost named Jason, a man who died while constructing this building. So according to the story, Jason was working in the basement when he accidentally fell into a spot where concrete was being poured. Instead of his fellow workers helping him, his supervisor instructed them to keep pouring. His body was trapped in the cement, and his ghost still haunts the building.
Starting off at number 10 now, we have the Blue Flame Ghost. The story goes that in the 1930s, a woman lived in Ohio's Sugar Grove. She was young, happy, and liked by everyone. She fell for a young man who had a terrible temper, and the couple were often seen
Fake news. One is miserable.
arguing in the town. Over time, the locals noticed her changing. She never smiled anymore and began to grow cold and weary. One night, the couple were parked beside a bridge when naturally an argument broke out. This time, it was worse than usual, though. In a fit of anger, the young woman pulled out a knife and stabbed her fiancé's throat. She kept slashing until his head came off.
Then she clearly was not happy with something if she stabbed his throat off. She was clearly very unhappy about something. He probably should have picked up on that.
She herself was bleeding from the struggle. She staggered out of the car and back down the hill, carrying her fiancé's head. She eventually collapsed and died at the bottom of the hill, where she was found by locals the next day. Since then, the old bridge has been replaced by a new concrete one. However, some still say that on certain nights, if you stand on the bridge and call out the woman's name, her glowing blue spirit will appear at the top of the hill and move towards you. What you do at that point is honestly up to you, but given the vengeful state in which she died, most people don't stick around. Next up at number 9 now, we have the Defiance Werewolf. This is a very famous one. The people of Defiance in Ohio have claimed that for the past 45 years or so, they've been terrorized by a werewolf. It was first sighted in 1972. Over the summer, there were many sightings of a rampaging, hair-covered beast on 2 legs. It was said to have a muzzle and was always covered in rags. The local media went into a frenzy, and even the police opened up a case file on the sightings. There have been many
She has things in hand, Jeff. Don't worry. Has the situation well handled. That sounds like a happy, functional relationship where communication is happening. Definitely no miscommunication there.
sightings since then. Many of them were around a series of old railroad tracks in the town, usually late at night. One of the first sightings was by a Mr. Davis, and he said, "I was connecting an air hose between two cars and was looking down. I saw these huge hairy feet. Then I looked up and he was standing there with that big stick over his shoulder. When I started to say something, he took off for the woods." His friend, Mr. Jones, was with him at the time. He said, "At first I thought the whole thing was a big joke. When I saw how hairy and woolly it was, that was enough for me." Next up at number 8 now, we have Brubaker Bridge. According to legend, in the 1930s there was a brutal one-car accident on this bridge over Sam's Run Creek, Butler County. The bridge is in a very rural area and nobody actually discovered the crash victims until later that night when a local farmer passed by. The farmer went to get help and a total of 12 bodies were recovered. They were eventually identified and given proper burials. That wasn't the end of things though. Shortly after, the farmer who originally discovered the bodies claimed that while crossing the bridge one night after, his car suddenly cut out. He said that he heard 13 knocks on his car, then a hissing noise, before suddenly the car just came back to life. Locals say that this is the spirit of the 13th victim, whose body was never recovered. The spirit is still said to haunt those who pass over the bridge, hoping they will be the ones to finally find its body and give them a proper burial so that they may pass on peacefully. Next up at number 7 now, we have Stony Creek Cemetery. The story goes like this. In 1825, the local caretaker in Stony Creek Cemetery in Adams County made a discovery. At the bottom of a large tree was the body of a young man. It didn't take much to figure out the cause of death, as the man's head was completely missing. Although it's hard to beat that in terms of strangeness, there was one other thing. The crime scene was clean of any blood around this headless body. The police determined the murder must have taken place somewhere else before the perpetrator then dumped the body in the cemetery. Rumors began to spread that the head had not been cut off, but rather ripped off by something extremely powerful. The case remained open and unsolved for many years before entering books of folklore. For those that say some nights, a misty figure appears under a tree in the cemetery, the ghost of this unidentified man, unable to find peace until his murder is solved. Moving on to number 6 now, guys, we have Patterson Tower. There are a number of theories about the origin of this strange tower, thought to be built by a John D. Patterson many years ago. According to legend, a group of teenagers in the 1960s took refuge in the tower during a thunderstorm. As the storm raged on, a lightning bolt hit the top of the tower. Electricity surged down the metal stair rail and electrocuted 2 of the teenagers, killing them almost instantly. They say that in the weeks afterwards, you could still see their charred outlines on the tower wall. Officials blocked off the tower from dark tourists by placing metal plates across the door. Visitors still just ripped them off, though, to see what was inside. Legend now says that on stormy nights, the shadowy spirits of the teenagers who died can be seen in the tower. A bright bolt of lightning will illuminate their ghosts, making them glow as if they had just been hit by lightning. When the storm fades, so do they. Until the next time. Coming in 5 now, we have Little Sugar Creek. The town of Bellbrook is sometimes referred to as Ohio's Sleepy Hollow because of all the ghostly legends that originated there. A man called James Buckley ran a sawmill there many years ago. He lived in a small cabin and grew his business to great heights, becoming the wealthiest man in the town. One night, his newfound wealth attracted some robbers. When authorities finally arrived to help him, they found Buckley's headless body outside. The murder was never solved. People say the cabin was haunted then by his spirit. Those who ventured there say they've been confronted by a headless ghost, his arms outstretched as if begging for help. In time, the sawmill was demolished, but that didn't bring an end to the sighting. Locals still say that if you wander down to Little Sugar Creek, where the sawmill once stood, you can still see the ghost of James Buckley, unable to pass on peacefully, or in case of his brutal murder has been left cold. Moving on to number 4 now, we have Otterbein Cemetery. This one is also known as Bloody Horseshoe Grave. During the 1840s, an Ohioan called James Henry was involved with 2 women at the same time, Rachel Hodge and Mary Angle. He wanted to know which one to marry. One night while riding home, he fell asleep on his horse. He awoke to find his horse had not taken him home, but had instead stopped in front of Mary Angle's house. He took this as a sign, and soon he and Mary were married. As his wedding gift...
Did he say Mary Angle or Mary Anal? Those could explain a lot. He probably stopped at Mary Anal's house for very specific reasons.
to her, he gave her the horse that brought them together. They lived happily, but in 1845, Mary died from one of the many prevalent diseases at the time. She was buried in Otterbein Cemetery. Henry courting Rachel Hodge, and eventually the two were married. He gave her the same horse as a wedding gift. They hadn't been married long before locals noticed something strange about Mary's tombstone. There was a glowing outline of a horseshoe on it. James took this as a sign that Mary was displeased with his new marriage. They said he was cursed. One night, witnesses heard strange noises and lights coming from the cemetery. The next morning, James was found dead in his barn with the mark of a horseshoe on his forehead. His death was
That was probably because he was messing with two women at the same time. Women don't like that. One of them probably X'd him out and blamed the dead lady.
ruled an accident, as Henry had been alone in the barn at the time. All alone except for one other creature, a horse. Even today, they say a strange horseshoe mark is on Mary's tombstone, and that on some nights you can hear the sound of hooves trotting up the cemetery road. Moving on to the inn. This place has been going since 1812, making it one of the oldest inns in Ohio. In the mid-1800s, Major Buxton, after whom the inn was named, took control of the inn. There have been reports of ghosts there ever since. Many of the ghosts alleged to haunt the inn are said to be of previous owners. However, there's also strange knockings people have heard coming from the basement where the stagecoach drivers would have stayed. The door to that same basement is known to open and close by itself, and there have even been reports of footsteps coming up and down the stairs there. Major Buxton's spirit is said to be a shadowy figure, often sighted in the dining room. Another owner, Orrin Granger, appears as an elderly woman wearing old-fashioned breeches who is said to steal pies by her distinct perfume. There's even a phantom cat that enters people's rooms at night in much the same way it did when it was alive. Next at number 2 now, we have Old Raritan. The story goes that as European settlers first began to arrive in the Ohio Valley, wolf attacks on livestock became more and more frequent. Farmers began to hunt down the wolves, possibly to the point of extinction, but none of them could have predicted what came next. One wolf...
Robin, you are gonna sleep so good tonight, and you can thank me for it. You're gonna be like, thanks, Panda. I can already hear you cussing me when you wake up at 3 a.m. all freaked out and shit. God damn it, Panda. You and your fucking stories. And the Hat Man. And you're going to see a Hat Man in your corner. And then we're going to have to scold him. Yeah, I just had to walk through a dark house, and you best believe I turned every goddamn light in the house on when I went to the kitchen. I listen to this shit all the time, but I'm a scaredy little shit.
In particular, always managed to escape the farmers. A huge grey one became known as Old Raritan. Farmers often reported seeing him and his mate wandering through the woods, but they never could corner him. Eventually, they became the only wolves that remained. One night, the wolves were trapped with their backs against Big Rock, a famous land.
Are you serious? They sold Les Paul? You gotta be kidding me. The fuck, man? I've got a Les Paul. Mine is a 76, I think. I think mine's a 76. I'd have to look. I've got 2 of them, actually. Great guitars. Both of which were a birthday gift from my dad. May he rest in peace. One of them is a redwood, which are illegal to make now, which is why Esteban quit making the redwood guitars. But my Les Paul's got redwood. Oh no, my Les Paul's, it's a 76. It is redwood and pearl, and it's got like gold inlays on the fret bar. It's pretty awesome. And when my boys get old enough, one of them's go into my oldest, and the other one is going to my youngest. Isaac, I would totally do that. I would definitely do that, Isaac, because I'm an asshole. No, I could sit here and talk all day about guitars. This one makes a really, really good guitar for. I mean, it's a really deep, crisp sound on some of them. I mean, you can't get that sound out of just any guitar. And Les Paul has a really, really unique sound. And the other one is my Martin. The Martin has a really beautiful, beautiful sound. I love a Martin. If you've never played a Martin, you really need to try it. It's a smooth play, and it's a comfortable play. No, you didn't tell me that. So you had it checked out? I'm glad to hear that. Because that shit gets expensive to fix. Les Pauls aren't cheap. And they aren't cheap to fix either. Especially for a 76. You want to fix a 76 Les Paul and you're pretty well fucked. Because, I mean, you put any aftermarket shit on that, then it's not, I mean, it decreases the value on it by quite a bit. So you really just can't put, like, if you fuck up the fret on it, or if you, you're welcome, Robin. I mean, you can't really just replace shit on a Les Paul by going to a generic music store, like, and picking up random shit. I mean, you can pretty well repair a Gibson Epiphone with just about anything. Oh, okay, that makes sense. That's good, though, that it's not the guitar. Because God only knows what that would have cost to fix if it was the guitar. And you know, those things rarely ever go bad. There's a reason they're good guitars. I mean, they're built well. I mean, they're really reliable guitars. From my experience, anyway. I've had a good experience with them. But also, if I'm just wanting to jam out and kind of be a little rough on one, I'll use a Gibson Epiphone. Um, the Epiphones, it can be anything, but the Estebans used to use redwood until they outlawed cutting down redwoods in California. Yeah, yeah, you're right, Vader. But they banned using redwood, Robin, because now the trees are protected. And you can't use them anymore. But Esteban used to use them for his guitars. And Les Paul did a series using them. But that was very brief, and I only think it was like for a season. It wasn't a long run with those. I don't think there were very many at all actually made. Robin, I think I have one of very few. And I probably have one of the last ones left that were built that way. My dad got really, really, really lucky when he found that one. But anyway.
Landmark. The hunters opened fire and brought the female down. Just as the hunters set their dogs loose to finish her off, a loud cry echoed through the woods. Old Reridan leapt in front and fought the dogs off. The hunters opened fire and wounded him too. Eventually, they called off their dogs. Old Reridan dragged his now dead mate up to the top of Big Rock. Once there, he let out...
I like the rosewood ones. The maple are really pretty. I've seen a few mahoganies, but I like the rosewood. The rosewoods are really, really, really pretty. Especially if they're done right. And if they got a good cut, they tend to be really pretty. Have you ever seen them cut out a cherry, Vader? A lot of the martins are cut out of cherry, and they have these beautiful natural swirls in the wood that really pop. You ought to look into getting a martin, Vader. I think you'd really like it, especially with the way things are spaced out on one. They're really easy to play. Oh God, they're pretty, Vader. They are so pretty. Especially if you have like a white pearl or a black pearl inlay. God almighty. Ebony tends to be dark. Ebony essentially means black. Right. But I seen a really unique um Les Paul. I think it was a couple weeks back. It had a blue and purple pearl looking inlay. And I really wanted it. Man. that blue and purple swirly look. It was like a galaxy look almost, and it was beautiful. And the guitar itself had that same pattern, and it was probably one of the most beautiful things I have ever seen in my life. But they wanted a lot of money for that guitar and don't have it. Yes. I really, really wanted it. But we're talking in the thousands of dollars, Robin. Like double-digit thousands for this guitar. And I'm like, ugh, I can't. Right. And it's a really, really, really good wood. But it's also a lot more durable because there's less cracking. Vader, it's actually it lasts longer too, and it doesn't wear down as fast. But like this Les Paul was just once in a lifetime kind of you see something that pretty. But I don't have that kind of money. If you ever get a chance, look up the cherry wood Martin and tell me what you think about it later, because those things are gorgeous. And you can look at the different ones. I mean, they're all handmade. They're not shitty guitars. Martins are handmade guitars. I mean, they are all handmade. They're handcrafted. There's a reason they're expensive. And it's kind of like with Esteban. Esteban guitars are all handcrafted and very durable, really good guitars, and you really can't knock them out of tune. Those are guitars you can be a little rough with when you're jamming out, and you're not gonna knock them out of tune. They have a really, really unique sound. They are, Robin. They take great pride in their work, and they should, because they make a beautiful guitar. Absolutely stunning on some of them. It's just crazy how beautiful they are. But if you ever pick up a Martin or an Esteban, you will never put it down. That's kind of like picking up a Les Paul. Once you play one, you won't play anything else. And the reason I like the Martin, I mean, I love my Les Paul. Don't get me wrong. I love it. But the fret, the way it's spaced out and the way the strings are spaced out, it's a little difficult for me to play. Like the neck on some guitars are easier for me because I have little hands. And when you have little hands, it's hard to find a good guitar that really fits you. If you pick up a guitar, you have to really size the guitar for yourself, because they come in different sizes and they space the strings out differently depending on what you get. And for me, the best fit for my hand is a Martin. It fits me better than any of them because of the spacing. They're just easier, and my hands don't cramp up as much. It's the radius and the width. It's like the size of the neck itself. I've have a hard time getting my hand wrapped around. And the Les Paul doesn't really give me that much trouble because the one I have doesn't have a really wide neck. But like the thinner necks on them, like where they're not as deep, like some of them have really thick necks. That's one reason I can play an electric better than I can an acoustic, because the girth of the neck isn't as bad on an electric. But for the Martins, they're perfect because they're not too big around and they're not too wide. But the spacing on the strings are perfect. They're spaced out just enough to where you can get your fingers in there without, like, touching all 3 strings, with one finger at a time. It's just easier to work with for me. Well, mine's not very thick. I mean, it's got width, but it's not, the girth isn't so bad on it. So I guess if I had to say, the biggest struggle would be the girth for me. Because, some of them are like almost complete branches of wood, like round. You have to have enormous fucking hands to play those damn things. That was the biggest problem I had with a Gibson. It is really big. I mean, I can play any of them, but some of them are a little difficult to manage. Oh no, that's not okay. I get what you're saying now. I guess we just say it differently. But that's not the issue. It's like, how some of them have like a lot of, they're rounded on the fret bar instead of flatter. Some of them are like 2 to 3 inches deep, it feels like. Just too much to work around, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Because although I do have really long fingers, it's still difficult to manage sometimes. I have abnormally long fingers. See? Right. My mom always said that I have piano fingers. Also, Paula, no, I do not have fat hands. I can see my knuckles. Show me. Also, Robin, you didn't know I had tattoos. I am all inked up. I have all the tattoos. I have them all over my legs too. And on my back.
A thunderous howl across the backdrop of the moon and then slumped down beside his mate. All was quiet, but not forever. On certain nights, locals say you can still hear a painful howl, and that if you head to the top of Big Rock, you'll be faced with the ghost of old Raridan, still ready to fight in his afterlife. And finally, number 1 now, we have the Bloody Bridge. Sometimes you can just tell from these titles where these stories are heading. This bridge lies just outside of Spencerville, crossing the Miami-Erie Canal. According to legend, the bridge was a site of a grisly murder in 1854. In the years before that, a rivalry grew between 2 local men, Bill Jones and Jack Billings. Both had fallen for a woman called Minnie Warren. In the end, Minnie chose Jack, sending Bill into a fit of rage. One night in 1854, Minnie and Jack began to cross the bridge on their way home from a party. At the other end, though, stood Bill. He was holding an axe. Time to run. Bill took one swing and severed Jack's head clean off. Minnie then jumped off the bridge and into her watery grave. Bill then disappeared until his skeleton was found years later in a well. Was it suicide or revenge from the couple's family? Either way, the years since then have seen reports of ghostly images of the murdered couple on the bridge. Some even say that when the water gets dark enough, you can look over the bridge and see Minnie Warren's face staring right back at you in horror.
Coming in at number 9, we have the Candy Lady. Who loves candy? I love candy. Get me a dip and dab and a strawberry lace. Although we have to say the Candy Lady of Texas is enough to make me give up caramels for life, which is a shame because caramel's such a dream. So the Candy Lady is said to have been a woman called Clara Crane. She lived in Texas around the turn of the 20th century. She was said to have been married to an older man, and the pair had a child called Marcella. Sadly, Marcella was killed in a freak accident, and Clara blamed her husband and went mad, reportedly killing him with poisoned caramel. She was then taken to North Texas Lunatic Asylum, but released a few years later. This is when Candy started...
Khaki. You can't go around killing people. Khaki. We found your urban legend. We know your secret. Now we know why Khaki was in the loony bin.
showing up on windowsills, luring in kids. Later, a number of kids across the state went missing, and one...
She even has a fixation on kids. This has to be Khaki.
Farmer was said to have found rotten children's teeth in a caramel wrapper on his land. The urban legend goes that the Candy Lady will start by leaving a kid candy to win their trust. Then she'll abduct them and stab them with a fork. I shouldn't laugh, but forks are kind of like the comedy side of utensils, right? From Candy Lady to Donkey Lady at number 8. Donkey Lady, now I've heard it all. Apparently, ye olde Donkey Lady haunts a bridge over Elm Creek in San Antonio.
Sorry. Wait. No, that's Mandy. The donkey lady is Mandy. I wonder if the donkey lady and the candy lady are friends. The candy lady lures you in with the candies, and the donkey lady gets you. Mwah.
Dates back almost 200 years to the mid-1800s, when settlers were living on the banks of Elm Creek. I've had a small wooden farmhouse and were making a living with a small number of livestock. One day, one of their donkeys or mules was grazing in the area when a young man from the town came across it. This man was not a nice man, but he was
there's
a wealthy man.
lady. I
he
think
was the
bird
son of
lady's
an
next.
important town leader. The young man teased the donkey and hit it with a stick, to which the donkey fairly responded by biting him. I'd bite someone if they hit me with a stick too. Retaliating, the man started heavily beating the donkey. Hearing their mule being attacked, the couple emerged and told the man to get away, throwing rocks at him for hurting their valuable animal. The man had a bit of Prince Joffrey entitlement moment, and he screamed that his father would hear about this, and to be honest, hear about it he did. He brought a bunch of friends to the farmhouse to torch the place. When the husband intervened, he was shot, as were his sons. The wife's dress caught fire and she helplessly watched her loved ones die. As she was engulfed in flames, she screamed running down the road. She began to burn as she threw herself into the creek. Her body was never found, but her wails are said to still be heard along the stretch of the road. If a car stops for too long, it is said that she appears screaming with her arms outstretched on the bridge. Some even report a body falling on the bonnet of the car,
Yeah,
but when they
she
stop,
is.
there's nothing there. Coming into number 6, we have the White Lady of Rio Frio. So the Frio River is a beautiful spot near Rio Frio in Texas. On a summer's day, you may see picnickers hanging out by the water enjoying the weather, but some say they've had a far spookier experience. Many people that visit the Frio River have reported a strange white mist hovering over the water. Some say it's a strange microclimate, but others cite the story of the Lady of Frio. The story goes that back in the 1900s, a young girl called Maria Juarez was the prettiest girl in the canyon. She was young and had an elder sister whom she loved deeply. Her sister had children with a man called Gregorio, who unfortunately cared more about Maria than a sister-in-law. Maria helped raise her sister's children and dreamed that someday she would meet someone, marry them, and have kids of her very own. She thought all of her dreams had come true when she met Anselmo, a dashing young man who seemed to return her affections. Sadly, this angered Gregorio, who told Maria that he loved her and wanted to be with her. When she rebuffed him because of her sister and Anselmo, he shot her through the heart by the lake. Now, her spirit is said to haunt the spot to this day. Adding a level of legitimacy to the story, there is an unmarked grave in a Frio cemetery said to belong to Maria, the White Lady who died an unmarried virgin. Coming into number 5, we have El Muerto. The El Muerto tale is truly terrifying. Back during the gold rush era, people thought that there was gold to be found in Texas. On top of that, the USA-Mexico border was hotly contested around this area, with an area of no man's land between the two countries. In this area, bandits were rife and Texas Rangers were around to keep them in check. One ranger, William Bigfoot Wallace, wanted to teach the bandits a lesson after one persistent criminal, known simply as Vidal, stole a bunch of Mustang horses. When he was in court, Bigfoot Wallace and his ranger friends chopped off Vidal's head, sat his body on a horse, attached his hands to the reins, and strung his head to the saddle. This was supposed to teach other would-be bandits a lesson not to mess with the Texas Rangers. Some poor sod then had to deal with finding the horse and its deceased cargo, which would be absolutely awful. Despite eventually being taken down from the horse, legend has it that
Wait a
Vidal
minute.
rides on through the Rio Grande area today, and his ghost is dubbed
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Like, okay. I was really pissed off if I got Minecrafted by someone named Bigfoot. So, like, this person has every reason to be haunting the shit out of people. If I got nixed by somebody named Bigfoot, I'd be really pissed off. I mean, come on. Who would not haunt people for an eternity if they got yeeted by somebody named Bigfoot? I would be really pissed.
as El Muerto. Coming into number 4, we have the Dancing Devil of El Cameroncito, a dancing Texas urban legend. I'm so down for this. Apparently the Dancing Devil is local only to El Cameroncito, so ladies of other towns, no worries if a man is asking you to dance, you're probably safe. Ladies in Cameroncito though, watch out. So basically legend has it that in the 1970s, a man in a dapper suit would ask beautiful ladies to dance with him. While they didn't find him beautiful, they felt compelled to dance. As he danced, women would be swept up. One day, a woman noticed the man she was dancing with had hooves for feet and that everyone near them was staring in horror. Realizing she was dancing with the devil, she ran away. The devil, however, remained. Now, I always keep my demons in my dancing shoes. Coming into number 3, we have Goatman. Goatman, 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 Goatman. Fun to say, fun to talk about. There are a couple of legends surrounding the Goatman of Old Alton Bridge in Denton County. The bridge is locally dubbed Goatman's Bridge, and some say that is because there is a goat-like demon that haunts the nearby forest. But others turn to a more elaborate tale of a local goat farmer. Oscar Washburn was a black goat farmer who was known for being an honest businessman, and he was a well-liked member of the community. Unfortunately,
there's a show something unsolved. Mysteries Unsolved, I think is the name of it. And there's these two guys that go around looking up these haunting stories. One of them's skeptic and one of them is a scary cat. If you haven't watched it, they're hilarious. And they did a show on the Goatman legend, and it was pretty good.
A successful black man caught the attention of the KKK, who was said to have abducted him in August 1938. Reportedly, they tied a noose around his neck and threw him over the old Alton Bridge into the river below. When they went to bring up his body, they found that the noose was empty. Frustrated, the Klan went to his house and slaughtered his wife and children. Washburn's body was never found, but a lot of paranormal enthusiasts will tell you that if you drive out over the bridge at night without your headlights on, the old Goatman will be standing on the other side to greet you. Some also report being touched or grabbed by a spirit, and others say there are weird flashing lights in the nearby forest. Coming into number 2, we have the ghost of Fort Phantom Hill. Fort Phantom is one of the most well-preserved historic sites in Texas, with original architecture dating back to the mid-1850s. Fort Phantom was built as a safe stop for immigrants headed to the Californian gold fields. The story behind the name of Phantom Hill seems to be twofold. On the one hand, the fort is said to look really high up on a plateau from afar, but when you get close, it looks level, so it disappears like a phantom. The other story is that one night while a sentry was keeping watch, he fired on a Native American who was on the hill. When he went to go and investigate, find a body. When the team at the whole fort went out to look for a band of natives, they couldn't find any evidence of them ever being nearby. This ghost on the hill is said to re-emerge every now and then, confusing those who watch from the garrison. Finally, coming into number 1, we have one of the most well-known Texas urban legends ever. We have the Houston Batman. So first, I was like, Batman? How yes, get there. But then I delved further into this legend and I realized that they don't mean like the superhero. No. The Houston Batman is also known as the Houston Horror and is a winged creature that has regularly been sighted in Houston, Texas. Now this creature is a bit like the Mothman of the Mothman prophecies, and I don't like a big moth. The story of the winged menace dates back to 1953 when a woman and her neighbors were sitting on their porch in East 3rd Street, Houston. 23-year-old housewife Hilda Walker said she looked up over the lawn and saw the shadow of a huge moth. When she looked up, she saw something huge then fly into a pecan tree. Her and her neighbours thought that the monster was around 6.5 feet tall, although they weren't totally sure what they'd seen. 14-year-old Judy Mayer, who was also sat on the porch, screamed in fear as she got a square-on look at the monster. He was described as a man, but with wings. Huge wings and a weird, strange yellow haze around him. Mrs. Walker reported the incident to the police and spoke to local news outlets. The Batman/Mothman may have been spotted once again by Houston Bel Air theatre workers in the 1990s, and the legend lives on today. Some suspect a government cover-up is at play, as vigilantes seeking the Batman discovered that some years after the initial incident, Mrs. Walker's neighborhood was raised to make way for a new part of the interstate. Alright, coming in at number 10, we have LeChusa. Ooh, I love a good owl, but this one is not your average mouse catcher. LeChusa is a shape-shifting witch who flies through the night hunting for prey. While in flight, she may look like an owl. When a LeChusa is stopped, they have bird bodies and human faces, so basically a lot like a harpy. The women seem to be hybrid monsters, as in their human lives they were said to have sold their soul to the devil, who gave them intense magical powers in exchange for their souls. How do you know you're in the presence of a LeChusa? Well, they'll let you know by a series of whistling and baby noises. Those who try and investigate what the noises are will likely become dinner for the owly she-witches. Not great. Coming in at number 9, we have the Chupacabra. Ah, the legend of the Chupacabra. This one isn't constricted to Texas alone. The Chupacabra story first sprang up in Puerto Rico. It is said to be a blood-sucking monster from the deep that attacks animals and drinks the blood of livestock, especially goats, which is why the creature's name translates to goat sucker in Spanish. Anyway, in Texas, reports of the Chupacabra were rife in the year 2007 when a woman named Phyllis Canyon reported seeing seeing one of the blood-sucking monsters at her ranch in South Texas. She also reportedly found a number of chickens with their throats torn open. This sparked a whole chupacabra panic, and the legend of the beast was firmly consolidated in the Lone Star State lore. Coming into number 8, we have the Chinese cemetery. There is a strange urban legend surrounding a 7-foot-tall ghost and her lover at the Lona China Cemetery in Texas. This isn't just your classic ghost haunting in a graveyard, except actually I guess it is, only there's a freakishly tall ghost. The story goes that a man wanted to run away with his lover of Chinese descent, but he was forbade by his great-grandfather, who owned the cemetery. The issue here was an issue of race. Anglo-Hispanic, but his granddie didn't want him mixing. I bet that old racist isn't pleased. The cemetery is now called the Chinese cemetery. Hey. Anyway, both the ghost of the tall woman and the man are said to roam the cemetery at night looking for one another, but sadly they never quite meet, which is pretty depressing. Apparently the female has been known to reach out and touch you, thinking that you might be the lost love. Sends shivers up my spine. Ooh. Coming in at number 7, we have the legend of Midget Mansion. Not the most politically correct name, but it seems that Midget Mansion is the name this
We prefer the term little people. Vertically challenged. Midget. I'm sorry. Continue, please.
This urban legend is best known by in San Antonio. It seems that the house in question is a mansion with low-hanging fixtures and ceilings custom built for a family of small people. A husband and a wife and their normal-sized children took up residency in this home. The father was said to be a respected business 1920s and was well liked in the community, who found him to be a novel addition. It seems sadly the man went mad one day and murdered his entire family. What with the murders and the odd size of the home, nobody really wanted to buy it, so it fell into disrepair. It seems that the ghostly sounds emanating from the building and strange shadows lurked for many years. A lot of people who went to the abandoned house felt a malicious presence. From my research, it seems that the old house has finally been pulled down in favor of condos. However, the ghostly presence, the trauma of the family left behind, is apparently still rife in folklore. Coming into number 6, we have El Cucuy. Am I saying this right, Texas? Let me know, because I'm just a humble British gal who has no idea really. So these urban legends come around so much, I honestly feel like in every country and within that a lot of provinces and states have their own version. El Cucuy is a Texan bogeyman, but worse apparently. Now the legend describes the beast as male, small, humanoid with glowing red eyes. El Cucuy hides in closets and under beds and comes for naughty children in the night. While this does seem like your classic boogeyman stuff, it seems that there have been some reported sightings of El Cucuy over the years. Now this leads me to think that actually maybe there is something more to this urban legend after all. Coming into number 3, we have Demon's Road. It just isn't an urban legend video without a spooky haunted road, is it? No. It's not. In Huntsville, Texas, there is a stretch of road called Bowden Road, although locals will tell you that it's called Demon's Road. Why? Well, because of the demonic things that have reportedly happened along it. Oh, and there's a cemetery at the end of the road, which doesn't really help matters. A whole bunch of Huntsville residents have had weird experiences along the road or seen strange things, but this isn't just your average haunted road. It seems that oftentimes specters will follow people home. One popular story associated with Demon's Road is that a woman was visiting the cemetery at the end of the road when she saw a man lurking. Now, the man was acting a bit weirdly, he was pacing up and down, but she didn't pay him much attention. After that, as she was journeying home, she thought she saw the same man walking on the road, but once again, she just ignored it. When she got home, however, she thought she saw the same man staring at her from her bathroom mirror while she was in the shower. She screamed, he disappeared, and she never saw him again. Creepy.
Number 8, Theater Center. This would make horror movies so much better. I imagine you get to watch a movie about ghosts in a place that's actually haunted by ghosts. Amazing. The Theater Center is apparently haunted by the ghost of an usher. The usher was killed in the theater by a jealous boyfriend when he was stabbed. On the bright side, this would mean you would get free movies for eternity. I mean, there's way worst places you could die. Imagine if you died in a paint store and then you had to haunt this place for the rest of time. The most exciting part of your day would be when they bring in the new fall colors. Wow, there's 11 shades of brown. Exciting. Number 7, Civil War ghost. I guess the benefits of being a ghost after a war is you get to see how everything happened. You're either like, I can't believe what the world has come to, or you're like, man, I was really the bad guy this whole time. Over on the Thompson Island Bridge in San Marcos, Texas, a Civil War ghost is taken post and he will never leave. The backstory on this ghoulie is he pops up whenever a war is happening. So for America, that means this guy's working overtime. Also, it said he can't leave because he made a promise to his brother that he'll make it home no matter what. I think it's time this guy took an L and just moved on to the afterlife. Number 5, Marfa Lights. We're jetting over to the little town of Marfa, Texas. In this little old country town, there's some pretty weird happenings appearing right in the sky. The Marfa Lights are these balls of light that appear out of nowhere, like someone floating in midair is lighting off an M80. There has been so much speculation on what it could be. Some people think it's spirits floating around, doing a little dance for the people watching. Just because you're dead doesn't mean you don't want attention. Other people think that it could be aliens. They think that they travel between and wherever these aliens have come from. They can use this spot to take samples of the Earth, like a little school trip. But scientists have said that it's just balls of gas lighting up in the air. Boring scientists always ruining our fun. But hey, there's still hope that they're just trying to cover up some actual alien activity. Number 2, Bigfoot. Yes, I know Bigfoot was originally spotted in North Carolina, but there have been many sightings of the possible missing link in the Lone Star State. I mean, if you're a Bigfoot, I can't imagine you believe in borders. You just kind of go anywhere you please, whenever you want, and try to not get shot, and make sure you're always out of focus. Although I do think that Texas would be one of the worst places for a Bigfoot to travel. They're covered in hair, and Texas is almost always hot. There's cowboys and trackers all over the place who would probably love to hunt you down, and there's so many guns. I would definitely put Bigfoot on the list of things that are totally fine to shoot on sight. But the old ape man is really popular in Texas. There's even a group in Beeville called the Bee County Bigfoot Research Group that is dedicated to finding out the truth about Bigfoot. I wonder if they get paid for that, if they just do it out of the goodness of their hearts. At number 8, we have the Sons of Herman Hall. This old hall is a nice place to have a low-key wedding or throw one of those hall parties. Are those still a thing? They were cool when I was in high school. I'm not cool anymore. But if you choose to have any sort of event at this hall, you're going to have plenty of unexpected guests. There have been tons of apparitions that have shown up while people are still partying in the building. People have seen couples dancing together, kids playing, and all sorts of scary, ghostly things. But the ghosts always seem like they're having a great time. Many of the ghosts are dressed in their Sunday best, like they're heading to a big event. If you're going to be a ghost crashing a wedding, you can at least dress like you're supposed to be there. That's a very nice thing for them to do. I wonder who would be the last one dancing. It would be pretty hard to out-samba someone who doesn't have a heartbeat. And number 7, we have the Adolphus Hotel. You know, I think if a big expensive hotel has a ghost inside it, it almost makes it more fancy. You know, I think if a big expensive hotel has a ghost inside it, it's almost more fancy. The owners are like, yeah, this hotel is so nice, people want to spend eternity here. If you agree with this idea, then the Adolphus Hotel must be one of the fanciest hotels in all of America because it is super haunted. The most famous ghost is that of a woman in white, the ghost of a bride who never made it to the altar. Her ghost has been seen all over the hotel, but mainly on the 19th floor. She tends to stick to number 19 because that's the floor where she took her own life on the day of her wedding. She hung herself in one of the rooms. Not only can you see the well-dressed ghost floating around, but you can also hear her. Some people have reported the sounds of a crying woman from empty rooms. On top of the deceased bride-to-be, there are some other ghosts who will walk around the hotel, whispering in people's ears, and even one that plays the piano in the ballroom. At number 6, we have Flagpole Hill. If you want to visit this place, you better have car insurance because your car is going to get bashed up. Flagpole Hill seems like a place where you could just display your patriotism and then go home. But that's not the case. There's a bunch of ghosts there who want to ruin your expression of loyalty because the punk phantoms will start throwing rocks at your car. People have reported rocks being thrown at their car when no one is standing there. Like, dude, I just got this Sunfire. Like, are you kidding me? You know what this baby means to me? It's crimson red. Crimson red Sunfire. So man, Maybe if you go to Dallas, you can show your American pride by going to the Cowboys game and skip the jerk-offs who throw stones at your car. Some people think that the ghost comes from a nearby house where a man committed suicide. At number 5, we have the Grandad Theater, an old closed-down theater. Of course, this place has some ghosts kicking around inside it. There have been loads of reports coming from this place. Most famous is about how the door to the projector room opens and closes on its own. It's not like that haunted door from the Los Angeles Urban Legends list that would crush people to death. That's probably my favorite haunted door of all time. But this one is still pretty creepy. Now, where have these ghosts come from? Well, apparently the whole place was built on an Indian burial ground, which seems like an old trope. I don't even know if I believe this one. But I'm here to bring you guys what I have learned, so it's up to you to decide whether or not you believe it. At number 4, we have Mary of the Combe Creek Trail. What are the top 3 things that make ghosts? Brides who die on their wedding day, people who fall victim to some sort of horrible curse or accident, and of course, children. I would say child ghosts are some of the most creepy. I think their little hands are all still sticky in the afterlife. Well, the sticky-handed ghost of a young girl named Mary haunts the Combe Creek Trail. If you're walking or driving down the trail, you might see her ghost standing by, watching you as you pass. There have been a few photos of the spirit, and it seems like she's not alone. In most of the photographic evidence, you can see what looks like to be some sort of entity standing behind her. Could this other phantom be the reason that Mary went missing? Maybe this monster grabbed her and took her to the other side. Or maybe she was kidnapped, and her kidnapper died alongside her. Who knows? And for the number 1 spot, we have the LBJ house. So we've had dead brides, hotels with ghosts, possibly cheating husbands, monsters, and ladies of the lake. Let's get into the real nitty-gritty of Dallas. The LBJ house is a long-standing home that everyone refuses to live in. Why? Well, there's a bunch of ghosts in there, you dingus. And now how did all those ghosts get in there? Well, I'm gonna tell you that. Slow down, Alley Cat. Because a man came in and murdered his whole family with a butcher knife and then hung himself. Whoa, you could say...
Boy, that escalated quickly. I mean, that really got out of hand fast.
Now the place has an evil attached to it. I mean, for good reason. A dude butchered his whole family in cold blood. If you do something like that, it doesn't tend to bring in the good vibes. Now, if you go into the house, you can see blood splashes appear on the walls and an overall feeling of doom in your heart. That sounds like a bad time. Coming in number 10, we have Men in Black. I mean, where do you think the idea of the smash hit comedy starring Will Smith came from? You thought it was an original idea?
Yo, I thought it was an original idea. I thought Will Smith is a genius.
No way, man.
Well, let's be honest, nothing is original anymore. As Picasso said, a good artist creates things, a great artist steals everything.
I'm pretty sure that he actually stole that line too. Well, the urban legend of the Men in Black is pretty in line with the movie. I don't think it's as fantastical or as heroic, but the idea is that there are secret government agents all throughout the US who will come find you if you have any sort of contact with extraterrestrials.
They monitor the planet, and it's up to them to make sure that they don't learn about aliens.
There have been many reports from people saying that they've seen some strange thing in the sky or that something landed in their backyard and then it takes off. And then the next day, a couple dudes in black suits come in who present themselves as FBI agents, and they'll come to their house and ask them some very strange questions. And even in some cases, they can be threatened or things could get quite ugly.
Well, threats from strange dudes in a black suit, yeah, that would work well for me. I'm threatened by anything. I'll keep all my alien secrets to myself after something like that. Thank you very much. If I see something in my backyard, I'm reporting it to nobody.
And guys, make sure you hit that like button because it really helps us out. Coming in number 8, we have Skinwalkers. This is one of the oldest Native American legends, and the legend has stretched into our folklore as we see skinwalkers represented in television and movies all the time.
The true form of a skinwalker is unknown. I mean, Che right here could be a skinwalker right now. We don't know his true form. Well, some people say that they start off as humans and then they get the ability to transform, and others say they are truly beasts who can turn into humans and other creatures to try to fool us.
But at the end of the day, does it really matter what the true form of a shapeshifter is? They can become whatever they want. You think after being a certain form for a while, you forget what it's like to be your true self. It would be like method acting when you get too into a role and you can't remember who you really are.
Well, maybe Daniel Day-Lewis is a skinwalker and he's just not as evil as the rest.
Skinwalkers have been known to use their powers of transformation to lure people into traps and kill them. Sometimes it's said that they can use use parts of dead humans as food, and other stories tell of them needing human parts for rituals to continue their shape-shifting ways. Coming in at number 6, we have the Bunny Man. There are several different stories of the Bunny Man, and almost all of them are gruesome. The most common is that he's a man who will walk through dark alleys or in the forest or anywhere with poor visibility, and he will follow people. He sports a bunny mask and has a massive axe. In the shadows, he creeps slowly, watches his prey, and waiting for the moment when they aren't protected. In those few moments when their guard is lowered, he will spring out and slam his axe into their face, taking their body back into the darkness. There have been some iterations of the Bunny Man that say he doesn't wear a mask, but his face has been horribly mutilated to make it look as if it was a bunny's. Skin has been grafted onto his head to resemble ears, surgery done on his nose and lips to reveal buck teeth and a rabbit-like nose, and disgusting scarring all over his once human image. This disfiguration that happened to him is what caused him to go mad.
And at number 4, we have Baby Train. Well, let's step away from the horrifying urban legends for a second to think about something that could be true and has been a tale told all over America.
Even though the Baby Train sounds like something where people would sell babies to the highest bidder, this urban legend is much more wholesome.
Now, this urban legend is attached to a more forgotten time, which makes it both hard to prove and disprove.
But it's the idea of small towns that were positioned close to train stations.
These towns were so close that when the trains came in and blew its steam whistle, everyone could hear.
Now, for some of these places, they would have an early morning train come through town. If it would blow its whistle around 5 a.m., this would wake up the whole town. For most of these fine folks, 5 a.m. was too early to get up, but too late to go back to sleep.
So all these people waking up next to their partner decided to just make a little hanky-panky.
This was a time before we had phones and Netflix. There was nothing else to do.
So this idea of this urban legend is that the towns that had the baby train would see a baby boom from all of the early morning, whoopies.
These people are reproducing faster than Joey Chestnut clears a plate of food. Coming in number 2, we have Charman. We get a couple sweet points in a row, and that's the only nice ones you're gonna get.
For a second, I thought you were gonna say Charmander, because I was like, that's real. Pokemon are real.
They are.
But in this situation, we're talking about Charman, which isn't Charmander. Well, Charman is one of the most horrifying urban legends to come out of America. It combines some classic tales with some very specific details that make it seem like the whole thing could be true.
The story starts back in 1948. There was a house fire. A father and his son tried to escape unharmed, but the flames are too strong, and the two of them are burned all over their body. While waiting for help to arrive, the son is looking at his disfigured self and loses his mind. He then kills his own father.
Is this real life right now? When help eventually does arrive, the son lays on the ground, and the police think that the boy, well, he's dead from how badly he's burnt. They leave for a moment and uses this as an opportunity to escape.
From this point, he has to live in the woods, hunting down people and killing them, taking what he can so he can continue to survive in the wilderness and feed his insane bloodlust without anyone finding him.
Starting off with number 10, the Bloody Headstone. Riverside Cemetery in Appleton, Wisconsin has been a popular attraction site for those who seek a paranormal thrill, or for those who just wish to get haunted. Among the numerous graves in this cemetery, there is one in particular that gets ongoing attention. Kate Blood. Given the nickname Kitty Blood, she was a supposed child killer, witch, and adulteress. Now her ghost is said to roam the cemetery at night and haunt her gravesite. When people visit her secluded grave, they claim to have been pushed or touched by her ghost, and some have even seen her apparition. They also claim that the area around her grave is unusually warm, and that's from her presence lurking around. What is most unsettling is that on the night of a full moon, apparently blood can be seen seeping through her headstone. Honestly, I just feel sorry for the groundskeeper that has to continuously clean up that mess. That's terrible. Alright, making our way to number 9, the Jogging Woman on Vine Street. So, I don't know what's scarier, thinking about going for a run or encountering a ghost that likes to run. Vine Street in Eau Claire is a nice, quiet, peaceful, haunted neighborhood. It is said that the ghost of a woman who was hit and killed by a drunk driver while jogging haunts this street. Her shadowy figure can be seen darting in front of cars, only to disappear right after. You know what? Running already haunts me as it is, so I can't imagine witnessing this as well. At number 8, we have dissected corpses. You know, I have never really been a fan of science or anatomy, but this next legend has me intrigued. The University of Wisconsin is presently known for their advanced research studies. However, there have been stories since the 80s of unethical studies that took place in the basement of the school. It is said that they would grave rob these bodies to dissect and conduct experiments on. The basement is now believed to be haunted by the spirits whose bodies were tampered with. Presently, the school does use cadavers to learn about the human body. However, they do it with respect, and it's only bodies that have been donated to the program. Moving on down to number 7, the Hitchhiker of Highway 12. First off, let me say that if you're one of those people that stop and pick up hitchhikers, what are you doing? You don't know their agenda. They could be a killer, or in this case, a ghost. Apparently, along the road of Highway 12, people have claimed to see a scruffy man with a dark beard, long greasy black hair, who is dressed in blue jeans and an army jacket. Those who see this man drive past him thinking nothing of it, only shocked when miles down the road they encounter the same guy. Those who are brave enough to stop and offer this man a ride find that he disappears without a trace when they approach him. No one knows why this ghostly man is here or why he is haunting the roadside. Next at number 6, we have the Bloody Bride Bridge. I think a lot of people's worst fear on their wedding day is having either their bride or groom get cold feet and not show up. Well, the Bloody Bride Bridge refers to the legend of a bride who got killed on the bridge while on her way to the wedding. It is now said that you can see this bride in her white dress lurking on the bridge at night. In fact, a police officer has witnessed this firsthand when he spotted her laying down on the bridge. He went to go call for an ambulance, but when he went back to her, she had mysteriously disappeared. It is also said that if you park your car near the bridge around midnight, the bride will appear in the back seat of your car. So, word from the wise, if you and your lover decide to get it on in your car, don't park near this bridge unless you want her in the back seat. We are now at our halfway point with number 5, Hogsback Road, Goatman. Here is another road I suggest you add to your list of places not to visit, and there's a good reason for it. Hogsback Road is said to be home of a strange monster that is half man and half goat. His upper body is that of a man with horns and sharp fingernails, while the lower half of his body is of a goat with reddish fur. It is said that this creature hunts for lost travelers to torment or kill. Apparently this creature was once a man who was...
What is it with all these, like, ghosts and goblins with really, really bad hygiene? You would think you'd have plenty of time in the afterlife to trim your fucking nails. I'm sorry, ghost, but you come at me with some nasty ass fingernails and we're gonna have a talk. You're not allowed to haunt me with bad hygiene at all. You must have trimmed fingernails. And clean hands, preferably. Ghost, wash your hands. I mean, it's perfectly fine to be scary and all haunty, but bad hygiene is completely unacceptable.
Was killed along this road and is now a restless spirit. In fact, a woman named Mindy Rosette believed that her and her daughter had encountered Goatman. They were driving by this area when the creature ran in front of a car. This is how she described the creature. His legs seemed to be bent back, the knees like a dog's. His muscles were really defined, thighs especially. I couldn't make out the hands because of the way it was running. I couldn't see the feet as I couldn't see past the car hood. Instantly, I knew this was something incredible. In our number 4 spot, we have Boy Scouts Lane.
And
now, as the
Kathy.
name suggests, Boy Scouts Lane may sound like the spot to go where Boy Scouts go to learn to tie knots, roast...
Full stop. Hey, Aunt Kathy. Leave it to me to be like, I don't mind being haunted, but cut your fucking nails. I have standards. Oh, you're really scary and you're haunting me, but at least wash your hands first. I swear. Priorities, man. Priorities. I can handle ghosts all day long, but long, nasty nails? no. I'm not gonna be haunted and have to look at your nasty ass nails. Oh God. Ew. Want to talk about haunting? Mary's nails haunting. She does. I can't handle Mary. But in like short spurts, I will watch her on AP's channel. But she's gone full retard. Well, I mean, she's been a full retard this whole time, but she's really, really lost it. No kidding. You're not alone, Aunt Kathy. I have nightmares about that woman's hygiene. Her hygiene is completely non-existent. I'm literally surprised she hasn't caught like hepatitis or some kind of crazy fungi disease. Like I'm surprised she doesn't have dysentery or sepsis. Because she eats with her hands. So I'm really surprised she doesn't have botulism or sepsis or hepatitis or something. Yeah, actually I have, Aunt Kathy. I listened to that story last week, I think. There's a movie about it too. She's one of those people, Aunt Kathy, that I could totally see her getting a house and then you walking into it after a day or two and it be completely full of garbage. Like, she's so nasty that her house would turn into a landfill and be condemned within a week if she was given free reign. I think if she were not living in government housing and required to do checks regularly to maintain her living space, I think she would let it get overrun with trash. And I think they probably have issues with her even still, with her keeping her space clean. Yeah. Like, if you, at any given time, if you look at her, her hair is always greasy. I'm not surprised. Her hair is always greasy. She's always unkempt. You can tell she doesn't bathe. Like, you could smell her through the screen. Like, I can't handle that. I cannot imagine not bathing every day. Like, typically, I bathe probably 2 to 3 times a day because I get sweaty and I have this, I'm very sensitive to texture. And I cannot stand being sticky. Like that sticky feeling you get if you get like hot. I can't stand it at all. So like even in the wintertime I bathe twice a day. I bathe when I get up and then before I go to bed. Because like ew. I mean whether you're exerting yourself or not, your body emits sweat and stuff. But once a day. At least bathe before you go to bed. Because ew. But nobody ran away from you, Aunt Kathy. Everybody loves you. I'm happy to see you. Robin's here. The movie was really good. The Bell Witch is a really old story. Yeah, I Am Behaving. That's Robin. Vader is probably still here, but probably bouncing between here and AP if AP is live. But I finished this picture finally. It just took a very long time. Lots of tiny, tiny, tiny details. But I finished it. Gosh darn it. Oh wow, that would be interesting. You should look into that, Aunt Kathy. That would be cool as hell. I mean, you could be. It's a possibility. Hang on. This one's 30 minutes long. We can listen to it.
One night, 4 young brothers were sleeping in their bedroom in their little house in Tennessee when they started to hear what sounded like a rat gnawing on one of their bedposts. So the 2 oldest brothers climbed out of their bed to go find this rat, but the second their feet touched the wooden floor, the gnawing sound stopped. The boys checked the room, they checked the bedposts, there was no sign of. When they closed their eyes again, except this time it was louder and more frantic. Little did they know, these sounds were just the beginning of a multi-year-long nightmare that they and the rest of their family would have to endure. Their terrifying story is known as the Bell Witch haunting, and it is considered to be one of the most frightening documented hauntings of all time. And today, I'm going to share their story with you. But before we get into the Bell Witch haunting, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place because that's all we do, and we upload once a week. So, if that's of interest to you, please ungold the like button's goldfish crackers. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. Okay, let's get into
Oh, well,
today's
that's
story.
that's crazy.
In 1804, a man named John Bell decided his farm in North Carolina was just too small for his growing family. So he, along with his wife Lucy and their 6 kids, packed all their belongings on wagons and then traveled more than 600 miles west to this
blame
1,000-acre
you,
patch
Kathy.
along the Red River in northern Tennessee. The area they settled was known as Robertson County, and at the time it was very rural and basically nobody lived there. And so the Bell family, when they arrived in Robertson County, fully expected to have to work with the few families that were there to build a farm where he had a reputation. John was very generous and excellent at working with other people. In fact, when his family was still in North Carolina, John and very gentle and sweet wife Lucy would open their door to anybody who needed a place to stay or a hot meal.
Yeah, I would
And
be
sometimes
upset,
John
too.
would just give money to his neighbors when he felt like they were down on hard times. So, after arriving in Robertson County and after the Bell family had met their few neighbors, John Bell got right to work. First, he began clearing trees off of his land, and then with that lumber, he built a 1.5-story log house up on this hill not far from the Red River. And in fact, the Red River was a very popular picnic spot and fishing spot for the few people that lived in Robertson County. And so in virtue of the Bell's house being so near the river, the Bell family was always running into their neighbors and saying hi and making friends. And so it wasn't long after John and his family had arrived and built this house that
Yeah,
the Bell
I can
family
see
became
why,
one of the
Kathy.
most popular families in the area. And for many years, the Bell family lived a very happy and prosperous life in Robertson County. Most mornings, John would wake up first, and then he would rouse the children, who would then leave the house and walk through the nearby woods to go to their school, and then they'd come back before sunset. And then while the kids were at school during the day, John and his older sons would go out and work the land or help build structures around town to build the settlement up, or they would build the boats that they would use to transport the tobacco and meat they produced on their farm down south for trade. John and Lucy would have 3 more kids while in Robertson County, and before long, their oldest children began getting married and starting families of their own and building their own houses nearby. But one summer day in 1817, so 13 years after the Bell family first arrived in Robertson County, John would have a very strange experience.
Oh my God, Aunt Kathy, I didn't think about that. You're right, though. That is crazy. Wow. You're right, though. I didn't think about that, Kathy. That is crazy. Wow. That's something to think about.
Experience that at the time he would completely write off, but years later they would look back and say, that's when it started. On that summer day in 1817, John was by himself. He was out walking through his cornfield near his house when he looked out and he saw this big dog just sitting in the middle of the cornfield. Now, there were lots of dogs around out and about, but there was something off about this dog. Shapen, like its bones had broken many times over and reset at awkward angles. And this dog just looked way too big to be a dog. It almost looked more like a big wolf. And this dog was staring at John in a very human way, not breaking eye contact, staring right at John. Now, John was not someone who easily spooked. But standing in this cornfield, staring at this dog who was staring right back at him, John couldn't help but feel totally unsettled and a little bit panicked. And so John, who had his rifle with him, raised it and fired in the direction of this dog. And when he did, the dog took off running. And so John, he watched as this dog galloped away from him and disappeared into the tree line of the forest far away. And once the dog was totally out of view, John marched forward to the spot in the cornfield where this dog had been sitting. And when he got there, he was expecting to see the corn kind of pressed down from where this big animal had been sitting, but it wasn't. There was no sign that any big creature had been sitting right there. And as he looked around him, he saw there were no paw prints, no tracks on the ground, either coming to this spot or going in the direction that he watched this big dog run off. John was totally confused by this, but after sitting there kind of wondering how this could be, he just told himself, you know what, I'm overthinking this. It was just some big, ugly dog and a missed shot. This is no big deal. And so John promptly turned around and walked back to his house, forgetting all about the dog. But not long after John saw this dog in the cornfield, his family began experiencing other strange things back at their house. At night, after the...
It's just a thought, Aunt Kathy. But if that is the case and you are tied to that line, I would strongly consider seeing a shaman who may be able to help break that curse so that your family line doesn't suffer it anymore. But I would strongly suggest seeking out a shaman or a priest or priestess or a Catholic priest maybe, or someone to try to help you see if there's a way to break it, maybe, because you'd have to get it broken by the same people, I guess, that would have laid it on your lineage. And where you live, there's bound to be some. It would be worth looking into for future generations at least. Because if it can end there, you know. I would also consider having that line cut by a priest, you know, have her cut off from your lineage and detached from your family tree. Because, I mean, that's a possibility. There is something severely wrong with her, whether it's spiritual or otherwise. There's still something there. She is evil. Anyone that could do what she did is evil. It makes sense. I would definitely look in your area. Look into priest and shaman, like spiritual healers, and see if one of them may be able to help you break that. Yeah, at least now you have answers somewhat. At least now you have an explanation of sorts. Like I said, I would suggest looking into a shaman. Well, yeah, that would make sense too. Aunt Kathy, make sure you get like references and you check them out first before you go further with them. Make sure they're legit. Make sure they're not con artists. I would hate to have to drive up there and whoop somebody. That is strange, Aunt Kathy. It's almost like it was fate. But you never know. You could be the one that was intended to break that cycle. You know? Maybe you're the one that stops it. Yeah. But just be careful, Aunt Kathy. Don't let nobody pull the wool over your eyes. Just be careful. And you can also draw off your family tree and pray. Because I think your family deserves peace. But I would do some more research and contact whoever you're comfortable contacting and go from there. If you need me, Aunt Cassie, um, you can call or message me anytime. I can try and help you with it. Um, look into some stuff around your area and maybe help you find something to help. Um, but I'll do whatever I can for you. I do know that. But like I said, if there's anything I can do for you, let me know. And I'll do everything I can to help you. No, jarring at least. At the very least, jarring.
Bluetooth pairing. Power off.
Oh no, I got the hiccups. Yeah, I would be shook. I know that. Yeah. You're right. If anybody can do it, it would be you. Yeah, it was Mary. I think she's just full on demonic. She's evil. She is the epitome of evil, I think. And you know, Mary probably cursed you. I mean, words have weight. That's why I would sever the family ties with her. Spiritually, I would anyway. Because you can curse people. That's why the Bible says be careful what you say, because you can speak things into existence. I would. But I would strongly recommend keeping Psalms 91 pretty close at hand. Psalms 91 is a very powerful passage. Yeah. But she speaks some awful things. I have it written down on a piece of paper I keep pretty close at hand. Yeah, she knows where to hit you. I've noticed that. That's one reason I can't watch her, because it makes me so damn mad. It gives me bad feelings. I can't stand her. I just can't. But anyway, girls, been on here for about 3.5 hours. Probably fixing to go to bed. I am tired. Yeah, I wouldn't give her that energy. Aunt Kathy, you're better than that. She's trash and garbage fodder. She's not worth your time. It ain't your witch. Yeet her ass. I'm gonna leave you with your witch. No, I'm not gonna leave you with your witch. I love you, Aunt Kathy. I'm glad you stopped by. I'm just tired. I've been on here for about 3.5 hours. No, you wouldn't, Aunt Kathy. You're a good person. I don't think you could do anything that would send you to hell. You're too good of a person. But I'll pray for you, Aunt Kathy. I love you, girls. I need to eat some cake, but not tonight. I need to go to bed before I eat cake. I eat cake, I'll never go to bed. Well, I believe you're good. So, it's just my opinion. Yes, I'll take one cake, please. Mm. Oh, that sounds delicious. I would totally eat that. I'm so tired, my eyeballs are itching. About the same time tomorrow if you want to come and we can listen to the Bell Witch story. There's a couple of them I can listen to. But I can see you guys tomorrow. Doesn't matter if it's ugly if it tastes good. You're only going to eat it anyway. Good night, guys. Sweet dreams.